The night Elena Brooks whispered, "I do," to billionaire Nathan Calloway was supposed to be the beginning of her fairy tale. Instead, it became the moment her entire world shattered into pieces she'd spend months trying to pick up. Because 4 hours after their wedding ceremony, in a penthouse suite overlooking Chicago's glittering skyline, her new husband moaned her sister's name while touching her skin. Some betrayals cut so deep you feel them in your bones. This is the story of how Elena discovered that the biggest lies often hide behind the brightest smiles. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. And stick around until the end, because what happened next changed everything. The champagne had gone flat in Elena's glass an hour ago, but she kept holding it anyway because her hands needed something to do besides shake. The Callaway Grand Hotel's diamond ballroom looked like someone had bottled starlight and poured it across every surface. Crystal chandeliers threw fractured light against walls draped in ivory silk. White roses the size of dinner plates clustered on tables where Chicago's wealthiest pretended to care about love while mentally calculating the cost of the centerpieces. Elena had counted once, $1,400 per table. She'd stopped counting after that because the number made her physically sick. $1,400. That was more than her rent used to be. Used to be. Past tense. Because Elena Brooks wasn't that person anymore. She was Elena Calloway now, married 3 hours ago to a man who owned half the hotels in Chicago and probably could have bought the other half before lunch if he felt like it. She watched Nathan across the ballroom, his hand resting casually on the shoulder of some silver-haired investor whose name she'd already forgotten. Her husband moved through the crowd like he'd been born doing it, which he probably had. Third-generation wealth did that to people, made them comfortable in rooms where the flowers cost more than most people's cars. Nathan caught her eye and smiled. Not the public smile he gave the investors and the society reporters circling the room like well-dressed sharks. This one reached his eyes, softened the sharp lines of his jaw, made him look almost vulnerable. That smile had been the first thing Elena fell for. Back when he'd walked into the diner where she worked double shifts and ordered coffee, he probably didn't even want. 6 months ago. That's all it had been. 6 months from coffee at a South Side diner to a wedding at Chicago's most exclusive hotel. Her best friend Shauna had called it a fairy tale. Her landlord had called it suspicious. Elena had called it a miracle and tried not to think too hard about the timeline. "You look lost." Elena turned. The woman beside her wore a dress that probably cost more than Elena used to make in 3 months. Navy silk that moved like water. Her smile was pleasant, professional, empty. "Just taking it all in," Elena said, which was true enough. "It's quite something, isn't it?" Nathan always had excellent taste. The woman's eyes flickered down to Elena's dress. Custom-made, fitted perfectly, worth more money than Elena wanted to think about. And something shifted in her expression. Not quite approval. "I'm Victoria Hensley. I've known the Callaways for years." Elena she caught herself. Elena Calloway." "Yes." Victoria sipped her champagne. "The waitress." The words weren't cruel exactly, just factual, but Elena felt them like a slap anyway, because that's what she'd been. What she still was, really, underneath the designer dress and the borrowed diamonds at her throat. A girl from Austin who'd moved to Chicago with $400 and a duffel bag, who'd worked herself half to death in diners and cafes and still barely made rent most months. And now she was married to a billionaire. The disconnect made her dizzy sometimes. "Nathan mentioned you were working at Rosie's diner when you met," Victoria continued, her tone suggesting this was charming in the way a trained dog doing tricks was charming. "How romantic." Elena forced a smile. It was. It had been, actually. Nathan had come in during the lunch rush on a Tuesday, sat at the counter instead of a booth, and asked Elena what she recommended. She'd been too tired to be impressed by the expensive watch on his wrist or the way other customers kept glancing at him. She told him the meatloaf was decent if he didn't mind it dry, and the coffee was terrible, but at least it was hot. He'd laughed, really laughed, not the polite chuckle rich people gave when they were humoring you. Then he'd come back the next day, and the day after that. 3 weeks later, he'd asked her to dinner. She'd said no twice before saying yes because she knew how this story ended. Rich guy slums it with the help, gets bored, moves on. But Nathan had been persistent, patient. He'd shown up at the diner every morning for 2 months straight before she agreed to go out with him. "I need to steal the bride for a moment." Elena had been so lost in her thoughts she hadn't noticed Nathan approaching. He slid an arm around her waist, and she felt herself relax into him automatically. 6 months together, and her body still responded to his touch like it was coming home. "Of course," Victoria said smoothly. "Congratulations again." Nathan guided Elena away from the crowd, toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Michigan Avenue. Down below, Chicago glittered in the October darkness, lights stretching toward the lake like scattered diamonds. "You okay?" Nathan asked quietly. "Fine. Just overwhelmed." "Victoria giving you the third degree?" His thumb traced small circles on her hip, a gesture she'd learned meant he was worried. "She means well. She's known my family since I was a kid. She called me the waitress." Nathan's jaw tightened. "She's a snob. Ignore her." Kind of hard to ignore when everyone's thinking it. "Elena." He turned her to face him, his hands framing her face with a gentleness that still surprised her sometimes. "I married you because I love you. Not your job, not your bank account, not whatever the hell these people think matters. You, just you." She wanted to believe him. She did believe him, mostly. But standing in a ballroom full of people who looked at her like she was a curiosity at best and a gold digger at worst made it hard to hold on to that certainty. "I know," she said, because that's what he needed to hear. Nathan kissed her forehead. 2 more hours. Then we can get out of here." "The penthouse?" "The penthouse." His smile turned wicked. "I've got plans for you, Mrs. Calloway." Heat flooded her cheeks. After 6 months together, he could still do that, make her blush like a teenager with a single look. "Mr. Calloway!" One of the investors was waving Nathan over, champagne sloshing dangerously in his glass. "Need you to settle a bet about the River North property." Nathan sighed. "Duty calls. Don't disappear on me." "Where would I go?" He kissed her, quick and sweet, then headed back into the crowd. Elena watched him go, trying to shake off the weird anxiety that had been building in her chest all evening. She was tired, that's all. It had been a long day. A long 6 months, really. Planning a wedding while working full-time and trying to navigate Nathan's world had left her running on fumes and coffee. She needed air. The balcony was technically closed, but Elena had learned early that rules were more like suggestions when you were married to a Calloway. She slipped through the glass doors and into the cold October night, welcoming the bite of wind against her overheated skin. The city spread out below her, beautiful and indifferent. Somewhere down there was the diner where she used to work. The tiny studio apartment she'd given up last month. The life she'd lived before Nathan. It felt impossibly far away now, like something that had happened to a different person. "You shouldn't be out here alone." Elena spun around. A man stood in the shadows near the door, tall and lean, watching her with an intensity that made her pulse spike. She hadn't heard him come out. "I'm fine," she said, forcing her voice steady. "Just needed some air." He stepped into the light spilling from the ballroom. Mid-30s maybe, with dark hair and eyes so blue they looked almost unnatural. Sharp cheekbones, expensive suit, the kind of face that would have made her nervous even if he hadn't just appeared out of nowhere like some kind of ghost. "You're the bride," he said. Not a question. "Elena." She wrapped her arms around herself. The cold was starting to seep through the thin fabric of her dress. "Do I know you?" "No." He moved closer, and Elena took an instinctive step back. "But I know Nathan." Something in his tone made her stomach twist. "Are you a friend of his?" "Not exactly." The man's gaze swept over her face, and she had the unsettling feeling he was cataloging every detail, seeing things she didn't want him to see. "You seem like a nice person, Elena. That's unfortunate." "Excuse me?" "You should leave." He said it flatly, matter of fact. "Tonight, before this goes any further." Elena's heart was pounding now, fear mixing with anger. "I don't know who you are, but you need to go." "I'm trying to help you." "By telling me to leave my own wedding?" She looked toward the ballroom, but the angle was wrong. No one inside could see the balcony. They were alone out here. "That's not helpful. That's creepy. Nathan Calloway is not who you think he is." "You don't know anything about my husband." "I know more than you do." He took another step closer, and Elena's back hit the railing. "Ask yourself why he chose you. A waitress from nowhere with no family, no connections, no one who'd ask questions, That's not romance, Elena. That's strategy. Get away from me. Her voice came out sharper than she intended, edged with panic. Now! For a moment, she thought he might not listen. Then he stepped back, hands raised in a gesture of surrender. You'll remember this conversation, he said quietly. When everything falls apart, you'll remember I tried to warn you. He disappeared back into the ballroom before Elena could respond, leaving her shaking and confused on the balcony. She waited until her breathing steadied, until the fear drained away and left only anger in its wake. Some random guy trying to ruin her wedding night with cryptic warnings. Probably drunk. Definitely an asshole. She pushed the encounter out of her mind and went back inside. The party ended at midnight. Nathan made a short speech thanking everyone for coming, his arm around Elena's waist the whole time, anchoring her to his side. She smiled and waved and played the role of the happy bride, and tried not to think about the stranger on the balcony or the way Victoria Hensley had looked at her like she was something Nathan had picked up at a yard sale. The penthouse was on the top floor of the hotel, accessible only by private elevator. Nathan had designed it himself years ago, back when he'd first taken over as CEO. Floor-to-ceiling windows on 3 sides, minimalist furniture in shades of white and gray, a bed big enough to get lost in. The first time he'd brought her here, Elena had been too overwhelmed to speak. It looked like something from a magazine, like a place where real people didn't actually live. Nathan loosened his tie as the elevator climbed. Thank God that's over. It was beautiful, Elena said, because it had been. It was exhausting. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. I've been waiting all day to get you alone. Her stomach flipped. 6 months together, and he still had that effect on her. Anticipation mixed with nervousness, want tangled up with the lingering disbelief that this was really her life now. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse. Nathan had already sent their bags up earlier. Elena's wedding dress would need to be preserved, stored somewhere climate-controlled and safe, another detail she'd never had to think about before marrying into money. I'm going to change, she said, suddenly self-conscious. The dress was beautiful, but after wearing it for 8 hours, she was ready to breathe normally again. Don't take too long, Mrs. Calloway. She escaped into the bathroom, grateful for a moment alone. The mirror reflected someone she barely recognized, makeup professionally applied, hair styled in soft waves that had cost $200, diamonds glittering at her throat. She looked like she belonged in Nathan's world. It was a convincing illusion. Elena carefully removed the necklace and earrings, placing them in the velvet box Nathan had presented her with that morning. Family heirlooms, he'd said, his grandmother's. The weight of that history had made her hands shake when he'd fastened the clasp. She'd bought lingerie for tonight. White lace and silk, impractical and expensive, and nothing like the cotton basics she usually wore. It had seemed important somehow to mark this night as different, special. When she stepped back into the bedroom, Nathan was standing by the windows, his jacket discarded, shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He turned when he heard her, and the look on his face made her feel powerful in a way she'd never experienced before. Come here, he said softly. She went to him and he pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a desperation that caught her off guard. Usually Nathan was controlled, measured, the kind of person who thought 3 steps ahead in every conversation, but right now he kissed her like he was drowning and she was air. I love you, he murmured against her mouth. I love you so much. I love you too. They made their way to the bed in a tangle of hands and half-removed clothing. Nathan's fingers found the clasp of her bra, and Elena arched into his touch. 6 months of familiarity mixing with wedding night nerves. This was her husband. Her husband. The word still felt foreign in her mind. He pulled her down onto the bed, his hands mapping her skin like he was memorizing it. Elena closed her eyes, let herself feel instead of think, let the anxiety and the strangeness of the day dissolve into sensation. Nathan's mouth traced a path down her throat. His hand slid lower, and Elena gasped, her fingers tangling in his hair. Mia, he breathed. God, Mia. The world stopped. Elena's eyes flew open. Nathan was still touching her, still kissing her shoulder, completely unaware that he had just detonated a bomb between them. What did you say? Her voice came out strangled. Nathan lifted his head, his expression confused. What? You just said Mia. Elena pushed at his chest, her heart hammering so hard it hurt. You said her name. No, I didn't. He sat back, frowning. Elena, what? Don't! She scrambled away from him, grabbing the sheet to cover herself. Don't lie to me. I heard you. You're upset. It's been a long day. I know what I heard, Nathan. She was shaking now, her whole body trembling with a combination of shock and fury. You called me Mia, her sister's name. Her 26-year-old sister who'd been a bridesmaid today, who'd hugged Elena that morning and told her how happy she was for her, who'd smiled at Nathan across the ceremony like they were sharing some private joke. No, 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 no. You misheard, Nathan said, his voice taking on that calm, reasonable tone he used when he was trying to manage her. You're exhausted. You're stressed. I'm not crazy. I didn't say you were crazy, but you've been working yourself to death for months, planning this wedding while still pulling doubles at the diner. You're running on empty, Elena. It's making you hear things that aren't there. He sounded so sure, so certain, and for one horrible moment, Elena questioned herself. Had she imagined it? Was she so tired that her brain was inventing betrayals that didn't exist? Then she looked at Nathan's face, really looked at it, and saw something flicker behind his eyes, just for a second. Something that looked like guilt. Get away from me, she whispered. Elena, get away from me. She was shouting now, loud enough that if there had been anyone else on this floor, they would have heard. But the penthouse was isolated, private, designed so that whatever happened here stayed here. Nathan raised his hands, backing away from the bed. Okay, just breathe. We can talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. Elena's mind was racing, fitting pieces together she didn't want to see. How long? How long what? How long have you been sleeping with my sister? I'm not... He stopped, his jaw tightening. You're being ridiculous. Then why did you say her name? Elena was crying now, hot tears streaming down her face. On our wedding night, Nathan, you said her name while touching me. I didn't, but his voice wavered, just slightly, just enough. Elena felt something inside her crack and splinter. The stranger on the balcony had tried to warn her. She'd been too stupid to listen. She climbed out of bed, keeping the sheet wrapped around herself, and started grabbing clothes. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold on to anything. What are you doing? Nathan asked. Leaving. Elena, stop. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking clearly for the first time in 6 months. She yanked on jeans and a sweater, not caring that they clashed with the expensive lingerie still underneath. I'm such an idiot. Everyone was right about you. Right about what? That this was too fast, too perfect. That men like you don't fall for women like me unless there's something else going on. She was throwing things into her bag now, movements jerky and uncoordinated. I thought I was special. I thought you actually loved me. I do love you. The words should have meant something. A few hours ago, they would have meant everything. Now they just made her angrier. You love my sister, Elena said flatly. How long, Nathan? How long have you been fucking her? Watch your mouth. Answer me! Nathan's expression shuddered. The mask of concern dropped, revealing something colder underneath. You really want to do this now? On our wedding night? Yes. He studied her for a long moment, then he sighed, running a hand through his hair. Fine. About 4 months. The confirmation hit like a physical blow. 4 months. They'd been together 6 months total, which meant... You were sleeping with her before you proposed, Elena said numbly. It wasn't serious. You proposed to me while fucking my sister and it wasn't serious? She laughed, the sound edging toward hysteria. What the hell is wrong with you? You're overreacting. I'm overreacting? Elena hurled her bag across the room. It hit the window with a satisfying thud. You cheated on me with my own sister and I'm overreacting? Lower your voice. No. She was past caring about appearances, about what was appropriate, about any of the 1,000 unspoken rules she'd been trying to follow since entering Nathan's world. You're a liar. You're a cheater. And I'm done. She grabbed her bag and headed for the door. Nathan moved to block her path. Move, Elena said. We need to talk about this rationally. There's nothing rational about what you did. Move, Nathan. Where are you going to go? His voice was harder now, edges of frustration bleeding through the calm facade. You don't have an apartment anymore. You quit your job. All your stuff is in storage. You have nowhere to go, Elena. The truth of it stung. She'd given up everything for him. Her independence, her income, her escape routes. She'd let herself become completely dependent on a man she'd known for 6 months. Stupid. So goddamn stupid. I'll figure it out, she said. Be reasonable. It's 2 in the morning. You're upset. Just stay tonight and we can discuss this in the morning when you've calmed down. I'm not staying in this room with you for another second. Elena, she shoved past him, wrenching the door open. Nathan caught her wrist, his grip tight enough to hurt. Let go of me. You're my wife, he said, and there was something dangerous in his voice now. We're married. You can't just leave because of a misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding, it's a fact. You're in love with Mia. His fingers tightened. I made a mistake, okay? I'll end it. It's over. Just stay and we can work this out. Elena looked down at his hand on her wrist, then back up at his face. 6 months ago, she'd thought those eyes looked kind. Now she saw what she'd missed before. The calculation, the control, the absolute certainty that he could talk his way out of anything. Let go. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Nathan released her, stepping back. You'll regret this, he said quietly. I already regret it. I regret all of it. Elena stepped into the elevator and punched the button for the ground floor. The last thing she saw before the doors closed was Nathan standing in the doorway of the penthouse, his expression unreadable. Then she was alone, descending through the building, leaving behind her wedding night and her marriage, and the fairy tale that had turned into a nightmare in the space of one whispered name. The lobby was empty except for the night staff. If they noticed the bride from earlier fleeing in jeans and a tear-stained face, they were too professional to comment. Elena pushed through the revolving doors and out into the Chicago night. It was colder now, the temperature having dropped while she'd been inside living through the worst few hours of her life. She had no coat, no plan, and about $60 in her wallet. But she was free. She walked until her feet ached, until the hotel was blocks behind her and the adrenaline started to fade. Then she collapsed on a bench in Grant Park and let herself cry properly, huge gasping sobs that hurt her chest. Her phone buzzed. Nathan. She declined the call. It buzzed again and again. On the 4th call, she answered. What? Come back. Nathan's voice was calm again, measured. We can fix this. There's nothing to fix. I love you, Elena. I made a mistake, but I love you. You don't even know what love is. Please, just come back and we'll talk. She hung up, blocked his number. Then she pulled off her wedding ring, white gold, princess-cut diamond, more money than she'd ever seen in one place before, and held it in her palm. It caught the streetlight, throwing tiny rainbows across her skin. Elena thought about throwing it into the lake, thought about selling it and using the money to leave Chicago entirely. Instead, she slipped it into her pocket and stood up. She had a friend from the diner who might let her crash. Shauna had always said Elena could call if she needed anything. Hopefully that offer still stood at 3 in the morning when you just left your billionaire husband. As she walked toward the bus stop, Elena's mind kept circling back to the stranger on the balcony. The man who'd tried to warn her. When everything falls apart, you'll remember I tried to warn you. Yeah, she remembered. She just wished she'd listened. Shauna's couch smelled like cigarettes and cheap lavender air freshener, but it was free and it didn't come with a husband who'd been screwing Elena's sister for 4 months. At 3:30 in the morning, that made it the best place in Chicago. I still can't believe he actually said her name, Shauna said for the 5th time, handing Elena a mug of tea that was mostly whiskey. Like, during. That's some next-level stupidity right there. Elena wrapped her hands around the mug, letting the warmth seep into her fingers. She'd stopped shaking about an hour ago, right around the time the shock started giving way to a dull, persistent ache that sat in her chest like a stone. He tried to tell me I imagined it. Of course he did. They always do. Shauna curled up in the armchair across from the couch, her own mug balanced on her knee. She was still in her pajamas, ratty tank top and shorts, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun. My ex tried to convince me I was paranoid when I found lipstick on his collar. Said it was from his cousin who apparently wears drugstore red and leaves it all over his neck. Did you believe him? For about 10 seconds. Then my brain caught up with my denial. Shauna took a long sip of her drink. You gonna file for divorce? The word felt too big, too final. Elena had been married for less than 12 hours. I don't know, I can't think right now. You don't have to decide tonight. Just stay here as long as you need. Your roommate's not going to mind? Kelly's visiting her parents for the week. You're good. Shauna paused. What about your stuff? Everything still at Nathan's? Elena's stomach twisted. She'd moved most of her belongings into Nathan's penthouse over the past month, one carload at a time. Clothes, books, the few pieces of furniture she'd accumulated over the years. Her whole life packed into a man's apartment like she'd been so sure she'd never need an exit strategy. Yeah, she said quietly, most of it. We can get it back. I'll go with you. Not tonight. No, not tonight. Tonight you drink terrible tea and try not to think about what a piece of shit your husband is. Shauna raised her mug. To marriage. May it die a quick death. Elena clinked her mug against Shauna's, but didn't drink. The whiskey smell was making her nauseous. Or maybe that was just everything else. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She'd unblocked Nathan's number after the 5th voicemail, mostly because ignoring him felt like giving him power she didn't want him to have. But she didn't pick up. How many times is that? Shauna asked. 12. 13 if you count the texts. What's he saying? That I'm being irrational, that we need to talk, that I'm throwing away our marriage over nothing. Elena stared at the phone, watching it light up with another call. He keeps saying he loves me. Yeah, well, his version of love sucks. The phone finally stopped buzzing. Elena waited for the relief that didn't come. Instead, she felt hollow, scraped clean from the inside out. I should have known, she said. Everyone tried to tell me it was too fast, too perfect. I didn't want to listen. Hey, no. Shauna leaned forward, her expression fierce. You don't get to blame yourself for him being a lying asshole. You fell in love. You trusted someone. That's not a character flaw. It feels like one right now. That's the shock talking. Tomorrow you're going to wake up pissed, and that's when the real fun starts. Shauna grinned, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Trust me, anger's way more useful than sadness. Elena wasn't sure she had the energy for anger. Right now, she just wanted to sleep and wake up in a world where the last 6 months had never happened. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from a number she didn't recognize. We need to talk. Meet me tomorrow. I can help. J.C. Who's J.C.? Shauna asked, reading over her shoulder. Elena shook her head. No idea. Probably one of Nathan's people trying to manipulate you into coming back. Delete it. But Elena kept staring at the message, something nagging at the back of her mind. J.C. Those initials felt familiar somehow, though she couldn't place why. She was too tired to figure it out. She set the phone face down on the table and pulled the blanket Shauna had given her up to her chin. Get some sleep, Shauna said, standing. Things will look different in the morning. Elena doubted that, but she nodded anyway. Shauna disappeared into her bedroom, leaving Elena alone with the whiskey tea and the too quiet apartment and the weight of her wedding ring still sitting in her pocket like an accusation. She didn't sleep. She closed her eyes and replayed the whole night on a loop. Nathan's voice saying Mia's name, the look on his face when he'd been caught, the cold certainty in his eyes when he'd told her she had nowhere else to go. He'd been right about that part at least. Elena had given up everything to marry him. Her job, her apartment, her independence. She'd thought she was building a life. Turned out she'd just been handing over all her escape routes. Somewhere around dawn, she finally dozed off. When she woke, it was past noon, and her phone was full of missed calls. Nathan, mostly, but also Mia. Elena stared at her sister's name on the screen, feeling something ugly and acidic rise in her throat. They hadn't been particularly close growing up. 4 years separated them, and Mia had always been the pretty one, the charming one, the one people noticed when they walked into a room together. But they were still sisters. They'd shared a bedroom for 6 years. They'd covered for each other when one of them broke curfew, and now Mia had been sleeping with Elena's husband. The voicemail notification blinked at her. Elena almost deleted it without listening. But there was a sick, self-destructive part of her that needed to know what Mia would possibly say right now. She hit play. Lena, it's me. Mia's voice was tight, strained. Nathan told me what happened. I'm so sorry. I never meant... Look, can we just talk? please, you're not answering Nathan's calls and he's freaking out and I need to explain. It's not what you think. Call me back, okay? Please. Elena played it again, then a third time, listening for any hint of genuine remorse. All she heard was fear. Mia was scared Nathan had told the truth. The realization settled over Elena like ice water. Her sister wasn't sorry about the affair. She was sorry about getting caught. You're awake. Shauna appeared in the doorway holding 2 mugs of coffee. You look like hell. Feel worse. Elena accepted the coffee, wrapping both hands around it. Mia called. What'd she say? That it's not what I think. It's always what you think. Shauna sat down on the other end of the couch. You gonna call her back? No? Good. Let her sweat. Shauna took a long drink of her coffee. So what's the plan? You hiding out here forever, or you gonna face the music eventually? Elena hadn't thought that far ahead. Beyond making it through the night, she had no strategy, no roadmap. Just a vague sense that she needed to keep moving or she'd fall apart completely. I need a job, she said. Money. I've got maybe $60 in whatever's in my checking account. Which is? Elena pulled up her banking app. The number made her want to cry all over again. $342. Okay, that's not great, but it's something. Shauna's face shifted into planning mode. My manager at the cafe is always looking for people. You could probably start this week if you want. Yeah, okay. It wasn't much, but it was a starting point. Back to waiting tables and minimum wage. Back to the life she'd been living before Nathan. The irony wasn't lost on her. I'll text him today, set up an interview. Shauna hesitated. You know you're going to have to deal with Nathan eventually, right? Get your stuff, figure out the legal shit. I know. And Mia. Elena's jaw tightened. Yeah. Just saying avoiding them forever isn't really an option. I'm not avoiding them. I'm regrouping. Regrouping on my couch while drinking tea that's 70% alcohol. Exactly. Shauna laughed, but it was hollow. They both knew Elena couldn't hide here forever. Chicago was big, but not big enough to avoid a billionaire with connections and a sister who'd never been good at taking no for an answer. Her phone buzzed again. The unknown number from last night. Café Lucia. 3 p.m. Corner booth. I have information you need. JC. That's creepy as hell, Shauna said, reading over Elena's shoulder again. You're not actually going, right? Elena should have said no. Should have blocked the number and forgotten about it, but something in the message nagged at her. Information she needed. And those initials, JC. Where had she seen those before? Then it clicked. The stranger on the balcony, the man who'd warned her about Nathan. He'd never given his name, but what if... I think I know who it is, Elena said slowly. Who? There was this guy at the wedding, on the balcony. He tried to warn me about Nathan. Shauna's eyes narrowed. Warn you how? He said I should leave, that Nathan wasn't who I thought he was. Elena remembered the intensity in those blue eyes, the certainty in his voice. I thought he was drunk or crazy or just trying to mess with me. But what if he actually knew something? Or what if he's a stalker who gets off on ruining people's weddings? Maybe, but what if he's not? Elena said, I'm going. The decision solidified as she said it. I need to know what he knows. Then I'm coming with you. You don't have to. Yes, I do, because you're clearly not thinking straight, and someone needs to make sure you don't get murdered by a random creep with information. Shauna stood, stretching. But first, coffee and food. You can't make life decisions on an empty stomach. Elena followed her into the kitchen, trying to ignore the gnawing anxiety in her gut. Meeting a stranger who'd somehow gotten her number felt reckless, but staying in the dark felt worse. At 2:30, they left for Café Lucia. The place was in Lincoln Park, a small corner spot Elena had passed 100 times but never been inside. Exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture, the smell of coffee and fresh bread. A few customers scattered at tables, mostly people working on laptops or reading. And in the corner booth, exactly where he'd said he'd be, sat the man from the balcony. He looked different in daylight, less intimidating maybe, though the sharp cheekbones and intense eyes were the same. He wore jeans and a dark sweater, nothing as formal as the suit from the wedding. When he saw Elena, he stood. You came, he said. Who are you? Elena stopped a few feet from the booth, Shauna hovering protectively at her shoulder. Julian Calloway. He extended a hand. Nathan's brother. The world tilted sideways. Elena stared at him, trying to reconcile the words with the face. Nathan had a brother. She knew that vaguely. He'd mentioned it once or twice, always in passing, always with a tightness around his eyes that suggested the relationship wasn't great. But she'd never met him, never even seen a picture. You're his brother, she repeated. Unfortunately. Julian's mouth twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile. Can we sit? I promise I'm not here to hurt you, just to help, if you'll let me. Shauna grabbed Elena's arm. We don't have to do this. We can leave right now. But Elena was already sliding into the booth. Something in Julian's face, exhaustion, maybe, or resignation, made her believe he was telling the truth, at least about wanting to help. Shauna sat next to her, glaring daggers at Julian. Start talking, Elena said. Julian leaned back, studying her with those two blue eyes. How much did Nathan tell you about our family? Not much. He said you were estranged. That's one word for it. Julian's fingers drummed against the table. Our father died 5 years ago. Left the business to both of us, split down the middle. Nathan got the hotels and real estate. I got the investment portfolio and venture capital arm. We were supposed to run it together. But you didn't. No. Turned out my brother's idea of partnership was more like hostile takeover. Julian's voice was flat, emotionless. He wanted full control. I wanted out. So we made a deal. I'd sell him my shares and walk away. The paperwork's been tied up in legal hell for 3 years. Elena tried to process this. What does that have to do with me? Julian met her gaze. Everything. Because the deal has a clause. If either of us gets married and stays married for a year, we get majority voting rights on all family assets. Nathan needs that control to push through a merger he's been working on, a merger worth about $800 million. The number was so big it didn't feel real. So he married me for a business deal, Elena said numbly. He married you because you were perfect for what he needed. No family to ask questions, no connections to our world, no reason to suspect ulterior motives. Julian's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry, I know that's not what you want to hear. But why Mia? The question burst out before Elena could stop it. If all he needed was a wife who'd stay married for a year, why risk it by sleeping with my sister? Because Nathan's an arrogant bastard who thinks he can have everything he wants without consequences. Julian's jaw tightened. He's always been like that. Takes what he wants, manipulates people into giving it to him, and acts surprised when it blows up in his face. Shauna leaned forward. How do you know about Mia? I've been keeping tabs on my brother, making sure he doesn't screw me over in the divorce settlement. Julian pulled out his phone, scrolling through something. I have a private investigator on retainer. He's been documenting Nathan's movements for months. He turned the phone around. Elena's stomach dropped. The photos were grainy, taken from a distance, but clear enough. Nathan and Mia. Outside a hotel. Nathan's hand on the small of Mia's back. Another shot of them in a car, Mia's head on Nathan's shoulder. One of them kissing in what looked like a parking garage. The timestamp on the first photo was from July. 2 months before Nathan proposed to Elena. I wanted to warn you before the wedding, Julian said quietly. But I didn't have solid proof until the night of. By the time I got those photos, the ceremony was already done. I tried to tell you anyway, but I didn't listen, Elena finished. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the table. Why are you showing me this now? Because you deserve to know the truth. And because if you're planning to divorce Nathan, you're going to need ammunition. Julian pocketed his phone. My brother's very good at making people doubt themselves. He'll tell you it was a mistake, that he loves you, that you're overreacting. He'll use every manipulation tactic in the book to keep you trapped in that marriage for the next 11 months. I'm not going back to him. I believe you. But believing and surviving Nathan's pressure campaign are two different things. Julian pulled a business card from his wallet, sliding it across the table. That's my lawyer, best divorce attorney in Chicago. If you want to fight Nathan, she'll make sure you win. Elena picked up the card. Margaret Chen, family law. The address was downtown, somewhere expensive. I can't afford this, she said. You're not paying. I am. Why? Elena looked up at him, searching his face for the angle. There was always an angle. What do you get out of helping me? Satisfaction. Julian's smile was sharp, humorless. Nathan spent the last 3 years trying to destroy me professionally and personally. Watching his perfect plan fall apart because he couldn't keep his hands off your sister, that's worth every penny. It was honest, at least. Brutal, but honest. Shauna snatched the card from Elena's hand, examining it like it might explode. And what's the catch? No catch. She divorces Nathan. I get to watch him suffer. Everyone wins. Except you're his brother, Shauna said. Bit weird, isn't it? Helping your brother's wife leave him? Nathan stopped being my brother the day he tried to force me out of my own company. Julian stood. Look, you don't have to decide right now. Keep the card. Think about it. But if you do want to fight him, don't wait. The longer you're married, the harder it gets to walk away. He left cash on the table for the coffee they hadn't ordered and walked out before Elena could say anything else. Shauna stared after him. That was the weirdest thing I've ever witnessed. Yeah. Elena looked down at the business card, Margaret Chen's name embossed in silver. Yeah, it was. You think he's telling the truth? About the marriage clause and the merger? I don't know. But it made a sick kind of sense. The rushed courtship, the quick proposal, Nathan's insistence on getting married as soon as possible. She'd thought it was romantic. Turned out it was just strategic. You're not seriously considering this, right? Shauna asked. Taking help from Nathan's enemy? That's sketchy as hell. Everything about my life is sketchy right now. Elena tucked the card into her pocket. At least Julian's being honest about his motives. Or he's just better at lying. Maybe. But Elena was tired of being the person everyone lied to. If Julian wanted to help her burn Nathan's world down, she was starting to think she should let him. They left the cafe and walked back toward Shauna's apartment. The afternoon had turned gray, clouds rolling in from the lake. Elena pulled her jacket tighter, trying to ward off the chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Her phone rang. Nathan again. This time she answered. What? Elena. Nathan's voice was strained, tight. Where are you? None of your business. You're my wife. It's absolutely my business. I stopped being your wife when you started fucking my sister. Silence on the other end. Then, carefully, can we please talk about this like adults? We did. Last night. In the penthouse. Remember? When you told me I was imagining things and then admitted you'd been cheating on me for 4 months? I made a mistake. Multiple mistakes. Repeatedly. For 4 months. Elena, please. His voice cracked, and for a second she almost felt bad. Then she remembered the photos on Julian's phone. Just come home. We can work this out. I'm not coming back, Nathan. Where are you staying? Are you safe? The concern in his voice would have touched her yesterday. Today it just sounded like control wearing a different mask. I'm fine. Let me send a car. No. You don't have any money. No job. Where are you going to live? That's not your problem anymore. Of course it's my problem. You're my wife. Then you should have thought about that before you fucked my sister. Elena's voice was rising, loud enough that people on the street were starting to stare. She didn't care. You don't get to care about me now, Nathan. You lost that right. I love you. The words hit like a slap, because part of her, the stupid, naive part that had believed in fairy tales, wanted to believe him, wanted to think that love was enough to fix this. But it wasn't. Love didn't make Mia disappear, didn't erase 4 months of lies, didn't change the fact that Nathan had married her for a business deal. No, you don't, Elena said quietly. You love what I represented. A clean, simple solution to your merger problem. But you don't love me. That's not true. Goodbye, Nathan. She hung up, blocked his number again. Then she turned to Shauna. I want to call the lawyer, she said. You sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Margaret Chen's office was downtown, 40th floor of a glass tower overlooking the river. The receptionist was polite but cool, the kind of professional ice that came from working with wealthy people's messy private lives. Miss Brooks, Ms. Chen will see you now. Margaret's office was all clean lines and expensive furniture. Nothing personal except a single photo on her desk. 2 kids, maybe 6 and 8, grinning at the camera. Margaret herself was mid-40s, perfectly put together in a way that suggested she'd had enough practice to make it look effortless. "Elena, sit, please." Margaret gestured to the chairs across from her desk. Julian called ahead, gave me the basics. "How much did he tell you?" "Enough to know this is going to get ugly." Margaret pulled out a legal pad, pen poised. "Walk me through it. Everything. Start from when you met Nathan." So Elena did. She told Margaret about the diner, the courtship, the whirlwind engagement, about moving in with Nathan, giving up her apartment, quitting her job, about the wedding and the betrayal and the photos Julian had shown her. Margaret took notes, her expression never changing. When Elena finished, she set down her pen. "Okay, here's where we're at. Illinois is a no-fault divorce state, which means we don't technically need to prove adultery. But it helps, especially when we're dealing with someone like Nathan who's going to fight this. He can't force me to stay married to him. No, but he can make the divorce expensive, drawn out, and emotionally devastating, which is exactly what he'll do if he thinks he can manipulate you into coming back." Margaret leaned forward. "I'm going to be blunt with you, Elena. You married into serious money. Nathan has resources, connections, lawyers who cost more per hour than most people make in a week. This is going to be a fight. I don't care about his money. I just want out." "Good, because you're not getting any of it anyway." Margaret tapped her pen against the legal pad. "You were married less than a day. No kids, no shared property. In terms of asset division, you're walking away with what you came in with." Which was nothing. Elena had given up her apartment, her job, everything. She'd been so sure she was building a future with Nathan that she'd dismantled her present without a safety net. "So I'm screwed," she said. "You're starting over. There's a difference." Margaret's expression softened slightly. "Look, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've seen worse situations than yours. You're young, you're employed. Barely. And you're not bound to him by children or shared assets. That's actually good news. It means we can move fast." Margaret pulled out a folder, handing it to Elena. "This is a standard petition for dissolution of marriage. We file it, serve Nathan, and go from there. He'll probably contest it, try to drag it out. But eventually, he'll have to accept reality." Elena opened the folder, staring at the legal jargon that would officially end her marriage. Less than 24 hours and she was already filing for divorce. It would have been funny if it didn't hurt so much. "How long?" she asked. "If he doesn't fight it, 6 months minimum. If he does, could be a year or more. A year of being legally tied to Nathan. A year of him calling, texting, trying to manipulate her into coming back." The thought made her want to crawl out of her skin. "There's one more thing," Margaret said. "Julian mentioned Nathan's been working on a merger. If that's the real reason he married you, we might be able to use it." "How?" "If we can prove the marriage was fraudulent, that he married you under false pretenses for financial gain, we can potentially get it annulled instead of divorced. Faster, cleaner, and it would completely destroy Nathan's merger timeline." Elena thought about the photos, the business clause Julian had mentioned, the calculated way Nathan had pursued her. "How do we prove it?" "We need documentation. Evidence that Nathan knew about the marriage clause and deliberately sought you out because you fit his requirements. Emails, texts, anything that shows intent." "I don't have access to his phone or computer." "No, but Julian might." The realization settled over Elena. Julian wasn't just offering help out of spite. He was offering evidence that could blow Nathan's entire plan apart. "I need to think about this," Elena said. "Of course. Take your time." Margaret stood, extending her hand. "But not too much time. The longer you wait, the more opportunity Nathan has to cover his tracks." Elena shook her hand and left, Shauna trailing behind her. They didn't speak in the elevator, didn't speak on the street. It wasn't until they were back at Shauna's apartment that Elena finally broke the silence. "I can't believe this is my life." "Yeah, well, welcome to rock bottom. At least the only way from here is up." Shauna collapsed onto the couch. "You gonna take Julian up on his offer? Get the evidence?" "I don't know. It feels wrong, using one brother against the other." "Elena, Nathan used you to secure an $800 million merger. I think the moral high ground already left the building." She wasn't wrong, but it still felt dirty, accepting help from someone who had their own agenda. Her phone buzzed. "Not Nathan this time." "Mia, we need to talk. I'm not the villain here. There are things you don't understand." Meet me tomorrow, please? Elena stared at the message, a dozen responses fighting for space in her head. The urge to tell Mia exactly where she could shove her explanations was overwhelming. Instead, she typed back, Harbor Coffee, 10 a.m. Don't be late. If she was going to burn everything down, she might as well start with family. Mia was 20 minutes late, which was so typically Mia that Elena almost laughed. Her sister had never been on time for anything in her life. Not school, not work, not even their mother's funeral 3 years ago. Some things never changed, apparently, not even affairs with your sister's husband. Elena sat in the back corner of Harbor Coffee, nursing her second cup of coffee and trying to remember why she'd agreed to this meeting. The cafe was busy for a Thursday morning, full of students and freelancers and people who had the luxury of working from coffee shops. She'd been one of those people once, before the double shifts and the exhaustion and Nathan. When Mia finally walked in, every head in the place turned. That was typical, too. Mia moved through the world like she expected it to rearrange itself for her convenience, and mostly it did. She was wearing designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than Elena's rent, her blonde hair falling in perfect waves over her shoulders. She looked like she'd just stepped out of a magazine spread titled, How to Dress for Confronting the Sister Whose Life You Ruined. She spotted Elena and hesitated just for a second. Then she squared her shoulders and walked over. Hey, Mia said, sliding into the seat across from her. You're late. I know. Traffic was... I don't care. Elena kept her voice level, emotionless. You have 10 minutes. Talk. Mia's perfectly made-up face crumpled slightly. Can you at least let me get coffee first? No. Lena, don't call me that. The old nickname felt like nails on a chalkboard. You lost the right to call me that when you started sleeping with my husband. Mia flinched. Good. Elena wanted her to flinch. Wanted her to feel even a fraction of the pain that had been eating through Elena's chest for the past 36 hours. I'm sorry, Mia said quietly. I know that doesn't mean anything right now, but I am. I'm so sorry. For which part? Sleeping with Nathan or getting caught? For hurting you. I never wanted... Mia stopped, pressing her lips together. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How is it supposed to happen exactly? Elena leaned forward. Were you planning to tell me, or were you just going to keep fucking my husband behind my back and hope I never found out? It's not like that. Then what's it like? Enlighten me. Mia twisted her hands together, a nervous habit she'd had since childhood. It started before you two met. Nathan and I, we were seeing each other. Nothing serious, just casual. Then he met you and everything changed. The words hit like physical blows. Before they'd met, which meant when Nathan had been coming into the diner every morning, making Elena feel special and chosen and seen, he'd already been involved with her sister. He told you about me, Elena said. It wasn't a question. Yeah, he said he'd met someone, that it was getting serious. Mia wouldn't meet her eyes. I was happy for him, for both of you. I backed off, stopped returning his calls. I thought it was over. But it wasn't. No, he kept texting me, calling, saying he missed me. At first I ignored it, but then... Mia's voice dropped. Then he told me he was going to propose to you, and I freaked out. I told him he was moving too fast, that you barely knew each other. He said he knew what he was doing. Elena's stomach was churning. So you decided to sleep with him again? Great logic. I was confused. He was telling me he loved you, but acting like he still wanted me. I didn't know what to think. You should have told me. I know. Mia finally looked up, and there were tears in her eyes. Real ones. Unless she'd gotten way better at faking emotion in the past few years. I should have told you right away, but I was scared. I thought maybe it would just stop on its own, that he'd get over whatever this was and commit to you properly. Instead, he married me while still screwing you on the side. Elena's voice was flat. Real commitment there. I ended it the week before your wedding. I swear. I told him it was done, that I wasn't going to keep doing this to you. Mia wiped at her eyes, smudging her mascara. I thought he agreed. I thought... You thought wrong. Elena pulled out her phone, scrolling to the photos Julian had shown her. These were taken 2 days before my wedding. You want to explain this? She turned the phone around. Mia went white. Where did you get those? Doesn't matter. What matters is you lied. You've been lying this whole time. Elena pocketed her phone. You said you ended it, but here you are, kissing him in a parking garage 48 hours before he married me. That was... He came to my apartment, said he needed closure. I was trying to... Stop. Elena held up a hand. Just stop. Every word out of your mouth is another lie, and I'm done listening to them. It's not all lies. Mia's voice cracked. I do love you, Lena. You're my sister. I hate that I hurt you like this. You don't get to play the victim here. You made choices, repeatedly, for months. You chose him over me every single time. He said he was going to leave you. The words burst out of Mia like she'd been holding them in too long. After the wedding, after the merger went through, he said he'd divorce you and we could be together for real. I believed him. Elena stared at her sister, trying to process what she'd just heard. Nathan had promised Mia a future together, which meant this wasn't just an affair, it was a plan. You're such an idiot, Elena said softly. What? You actually believed him. You thought he'd choose you. Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. Mia, he used both of us. He married me for a business deal. He was sleeping with you to keep you quiet and compliant. The second you stopped being useful, he would have dropped you without a second thought. That's not true. He loves me. He doesn't love anyone but himself. Elena stood, grabbing her jacket. And the fact that you can't see that makes you even more pathetic than I thought. Don't leave, please. We need to talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. You betrayed me. He betrayed me. You deserve each other. Elena threw a few dollars on the table for her coffee. Stay away from me, Mia. I mean it. You try to contact me again and I'm blocking your number. Lena, wait. But Elena was already walking away, pushing through the cafe door and out into the cold morning air. She made it half a block before the shaking started, adrenaline and anger and something that felt dangerously close to grief. Her phone rang. Julian. She answered without thinking. What? Good morning to you too. His voice was dry, amused. Rough night? Rough morning. I just had coffee with my sister. How'd that go? About as well as you'd expect. Elena leaned against a building, trying to steady her breathing. She admitted the affair started before I even met Nathan, then tried to justify it by saying he promised to leave me for her. Julian was quiet for a moment. Did she seem like she believed him? Yeah, she's either the best liar I've ever met, or she's genuinely that delusional. Probably both. A pause. Where are you right now? Lincoln Park. Why? Stay there. I'll come to you. I have the evidence Margaret asked about, the proof that Nathan married you for the merger. Julian's voice was serious now. You wanted ammunition? I've got it. Elena's heart rate kicked up. How did you get it? Let's just say Nathan isn't as careful with his email security as he thinks he is. She could hear the smile in Julian's voice. There's a park 2 blocks north of Harbor Coffee. Meet me there in 20 minutes? He hung up before she could argue. Elena walked to the park slowly, trying to organize her thoughts. The conversation with Mia had left her feeling scraped raw, exposed. Learning that Nathan had been planning to divorce her all along shouldn't have hurt more than the affair, but somehow it did. She hadn't just been his wife. She'd been his mark. Julian was already waiting when she arrived, sitting on a bench near the playground. He looked tired, Elena noticed. Dark circles under his eyes, tension in his shoulders. Whatever he'd been doing to get this evidence, it had cost him sleep. You look terrible, she said, sitting down next to him. Thanks, you too. It should have been insulting, but it just made her laugh. At least Julian didn't pretend she looked fine when she clearly didn't. He pulled out a tablet, waking it up. Before I show you this, I need to know you're serious about taking Nathan down. Because once you see what's on here, there's no going back. You use this in court, it's going to get ugly. It's already ugly. It's going to get uglier. Julian met her eyes. Nathan's going to come after you hard. He'll try to discredit you, make you look unstable or vindictive or gold-digging. He has the resources to make your life hell. He's already making my life hell. At least this way I'm fighting back. Julian studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. Here. He turned the tablet toward her. Email chains, dozens of them, between Nathan and his lawyers. Elena scrolled through, her stomach sinking with every line. The first email was dated 8 months ago. Subject line, marriage clause strategy. We need to find someone suitable quickly. Timeline is tight if we want to close the merger by Q2. Requirements. No family complications. Limited social connections. Financially dependent. Someone who won't ask too many questions. Another email, this one from Nathan's lawyer. Suggest targeting service industry workers. Waitresses, baristas, retail. Women working multiple jobs, struggling financially. They're less likely to have resources to fight back if things go south. Elena felt sick. Keep reading, Julian said quietly. She did. The emails got worse. Nathan and his team discussing how to approach her, what story to tell, how fast to move. One email literally outlined a timeline. 2 months of dating, proposal by month 3, wedding by month 6. He'd planned the whole thing. Every coffee date, every sweet gesture, every moment she'd thought was real. It had all been calculated. There's more, Julian said, scrolling down. These are from after you two started dating. An email from Nathan to his lawyer. She's perfect. No family except one sister, no close friends, working 2 jobs to make rent. Isolated, desperate for stability. This is going to work. Another one. She's falling for it faster than expected. Might be able to move up the proposal timeline. We'll keep you posted. And then, dated 2 weeks before the wedding. Minor complication with the sister. She's threatening to tell Elena about our previous relationship. I'll handle it. Worst case, we proceed as planned, and I manage both of them until after the merger closes. Elena stopped reading. She couldn't breathe properly. Couldn't think past the roaring in her ears. That's enough, she managed. Julian took the tablet back. I have copies of everything. Margaret can use this to prove fraud, get the marriage annulled. It completely destroys Nathan's merger timeline and probably tanks his credibility with the board. He really did this. Elena's voice sounded distant, like it was coming from someone else. He actually planned out how to manipulate me into marrying him. Yeah. And Mia. He was managing her too, like she was just another problem to solve. Nathan sees people as tools, things he can use to get what he wants. Julian's expression was grim. I'm sorry you had to learn that the hard way. Elena sat there for a long moment, staring at the playground where a group of kids were screaming with laughter on the swings. Normal people, living normal lives, not caught up in billionaire family drama and corporate mergers and systematic emotional manipulation. I want to destroy him, she said finally. Good, because I can help with that. Julian leaned back, stretching his legs out. Margaret files for annulment, uses these emails as evidence. The board finds out Nathan committed fraud to secure the merger. They'll turn on him. The merger falls through, Nathan loses credibility, and I get my company back. What about Mia? What about her? Does she get dragged into this? Because as much as I hate her right now, she's still... Elena stopped, not sure how to finish that sentence. Still her sister? Still family? Those words felt meaningless after this morning. She'll probably get called as a witness if Nathan contests the annulment, Julian said. But she's not the main focus. Nathan is. Elena thought about Mia's face in the cafe, the way she'd actually believed Nathan was going to leave Elena for her. He'd played them both, just in different ways. Show me how to access these files, Elena said. I want copies of everything. Julian walked her through it, showing her how to download the emails to her phone. By the time they finished, Elena had hundreds of pages of evidence that her entire marriage had been a lie from day one. Thank you, she said, for this, for helping me. Don't thank me yet. We haven't won anything. Julian stood, pocketing the tablet. But we will. Nathan's made a career out of underestimating people. He's about to find out what happens when his mark fights back. Elena watched him walk away, then sat alone on the bench for a while longer, letting the reality of what she'd just learned settle over her like snow. Nathan had seen her struggling at the diner and thought, perfect target. He'd weaponized her loneliness, her financial instability, her desperate hope for something better. He'd studied her like a problem to solve and then executed his plan with surgical precision. And she'd fallen for every second of it. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I know what you're planning. Don't do it. We can still fix this. N. Elena stared at the message, anger burning through the numbness. He was tracking her somehow. Either he'd put something on her phone, or he had people watching her, or actually, it didn't matter how he was doing it. What mattered was that he was still trying to control her, even now. She typed back, "There's nothing to fix. It was never real." His response came immediately. "That's not true. My feelings for you are real. The rest was just business. Just business. You married me for business. I married you because I needed you. That doesn't mean I don't care about you." Elena wanted to throw her phone into the nearest trash can. Instead, she forced herself to stay calm, to think strategically. Nathan was scared. That's why he was texting, why he was trying to reason with her. He knew she had evidence now, knew she was planning to use it. Good. Let him be scared. "Leave me alone, Nathan. You'll hear from my lawyer." She blocked the number and stood up, heading back toward Shauna's apartment. She had work to do. Evidence to organize, strategies to plan with Margaret, a marriage to annul, and a billionaire to take down. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like the first real breath she'd taken in days. When she got back to the apartment, Shauna was sprawled on the couch, watching some reality show about people buying houses they couldn't afford. "How'd it go with Mia?" Shauna asked, muting the TV. She admitted everything. Said Nathan promised to leave me for her after the merger. Jesus. Then I met with Julian. He has emails proving Nathan planned the whole marriage as a business strategy. Elena collapsed into the armchair. Every single thing about our relationship was calculated. The coffee dates, the proposal, all of it. He literally had his lawyers help him pick me as a target. Shauna's face went through several expressions: shock, anger, disgust. "That's the most fucked up thing I've ever heard." "Yeah. What are you going to do?" "Annul the marriage. Use the evidence to destroy his merger and his reputation." Elena pulled out her phone, scrolling through the downloaded emails. "Margaret says it'll get ugly, but I don't care anymore. He doesn't get to do this and walk away clean." "Hell yeah, burn it all down." Shauna grabbed her laptop. "I'll help. What do you need?" They spent the next 3 hours organizing evidence, making timelines, building a case. By the time the sun started setting, Elena had a folder full of documentation that would make any judge question whether her marriage had ever been legitimate. Her phone rang. Margaret. "I got the files from Julian," the lawyer said without preamble. "This is good, Elena. Really good. We can file for annulment based on fraud, use these emails to prove Nathan entered the marriage under false pretenses. How long will it take? If Nathan doesn't contest it? A few weeks. If he fights it?" Margaret paused. "Could be months, but with this evidence, I don't think he'll fight too hard. Fighting means these emails become public record. His board will see them, his business partners, everyone. He can't afford that kind of exposure. So he'll have to let me go." "Exactly. He's trapped. Either he agrees to the annulment quietly, or he drags it out and destroys his own reputation in the process." Elena felt something loosen in her chest. "When can we file?" "I can have the paperwork ready by tomorrow. We'll serve him by end of week." Margaret's voice softened slightly. "You sure you're ready for this? Once we file, there's no taking it back." "I'm sure." After she hung up, Elena sat in the growing darkness of Shauna's apartment, feeling the weight of the decision settle over her. In less than a week, she'd gone from married to filing for annulment. From believing in fairy tales to understanding exactly how billionaires manipulated people to get what they wanted. It should have broken her. Maybe it still would, eventually. But right now she just felt determined. "You okay?" Shauna asked from the couch. "Ask me again in a month." "Fair enough." Shauna grabbed 2 beers from the fridge, handing one to Elena. "For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing." "Yeah?" "Yeah. Nathan deserves everything coming to him. And Mia," Shauna shook her head, "I can't believe she actually thought he'd leave you for her. Like, did she miss the part where he's a manipulative sociopath? She saw what she wanted to see, same as me." "No." Shauna pointed the beer bottle at her. "You fell in love with someone who presented himself as kind and genuine. You didn't ignore red flags because he deliberately hid them. That's on him, not you." Elena wanted to believe that. But late at night, when she couldn't sleep and her brain wouldn't shut off, she kept replaying every moment with Nathan, looking for signs she'd missed. The way he'd controlled their schedule, isolated her from her few friends, made her dependent on him financially and emotionally. The signs had been there. She just hadn't known what she was looking at. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number, another message from Nathan. Please call me. I can explain everything. This doesn't have to end like this. Then another. I made mistakes, but I do love you. Give me a chance to prove it. And another. You're listening to Julian. He's filling your head with lies because he wants to hurt me. Don't trust him. Elena showed the messages to Shauna. He's not going to stop, is he? Nope. Not until the annulment's final and he realizes he can't manipulate you anymore. Shauna grabbed Elena's phone, typing something. What's Julian's number? Why? Because Nathan needs to know he's not getting away with this harassment. Elena pulled up Julian's contact. Shauna sent him a quick text. Nathan's blowing up Elena's phone from different numbers. Can you make it stop? The response came fast. On it. 20 minutes later, the text from Nathan stopped. Elena didn't ask what Julian had done. She wasn't sure she wanted to know. That night, she lay on Shauna's couch staring at the ceiling, trying to imagine what her life would look like a month from now. 2 months. 6. She'd be divorced. Annulled, technically. Free from Nathan, but also completely starting over. No job, no savings, no apartment. Just her and Shauna's charity and a determination to never let anyone make her feel that powerless again. It wasn't much, but it was something. Her phone lit up with one final message. Julian. Court date set for next week. Margaret will send details. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, we start fighting back for real. Elena closed her eyes and, for the first time in 3 days, actually slept. The week passed in a blur of legal documents and preparation. Margaret coached Elena on what to expect in court, how to handle Nathan's lawyer, what questions the judge might ask. Julian provided additional evidence, financial records showing the merger timeline, board meeting minutes discussing the marriage clause, even a recording of Nathan discussing the strategy with his lawyer. The recording was what clinched it. Nathan's voice, clear and cold. I need a wife who'll stay married for a year without asking too many questions. Elena fits the profile perfectly. Isolated, financially vulnerable, no support system to warn her off. By the time she realizes what this really is, it'll be too late to back out. Hearing it made Elena physically ill, but it also made her angry enough to stop doubting herself. Friday afternoon, Nathan was served with the annulment papers. Elena wasn't there to see it, but Julian texted her a photo of the process server leaving the Callaway Hotel with a smug smile on his face. Done. He knows now. Within an hour, Elena's phone started ringing. Nathan's lawyer, trying to negotiate. Margaret handled it, refusing every offer to settle quietly, insisting they proceed with the annulment and public disclosure. Then Nathan himself showed up at Shauna's apartment. Elena heard the buzzer and made the mistake of answering the intercom. What? Elena, it's me. Let me up, please. She should have said no, should have told him to leave and never come back, but there was a part of her, the part that had loved him, or loved who she thought he was, that needed to face him one more time. 5 minutes, she said, buzzing him in. Shauna looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Are you serious right now? I need to do this. Fine, but I'm staying right here in case he tries anything. When Nathan knocked, Elena opened the door but didn't let him inside. He looked worse than she'd ever seen him, rumpled suit, bloodshot eyes, hair uncombed, like he'd spent the week falling apart. Good. You can't do this, he said without preamble. The annulment. You're destroying everything. You destroyed everything when you married me for a business deal. That's not... It's more complicated than that. No, Nathan, it's really not. Elena crossed her arms. You targeted me. You studied me like a problem to solve and then executed a plan to trap me in a marriage I never would have agreed to if I'd known the truth. I fell in love with you. After you married me for business reasons? How convenient. It wasn't like that. The marriage clause was just... He stopped, running a hand through his hair. Okay, yes, initially it was strategic, but spending time with you, getting to know you, that was real. My feelings are real. Your feelings don't matter. You committed fraud. I'm trying to fix things with Mia. I ended it completely. It's over. Nathan stepped closer, and Elena resisted the urge to back away. I chose you. I'm choosing you now. Just drop the annulment and we can start over. For real this time. Elena laughed. Actually laughed. You think I'm stupid enough to believe that? You were planning to divorce me after the merger. You told Mia as much. His face went carefully blank. She's lying. Julian has the emails, Nathan. All of them, including the ones where you discussed managing both me and Mia until the merger closed. Elena felt a fierce satisfaction at the flash of panic in his eyes. You're done. The annulment's happening, the merger's falling through, and everyone's going to know exactly what kind of person you are. You can't do this to me. Watch me. Elena, please. His voice cracked. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. But I'm asking you, begging you, don't destroy my life over this. You destroyed mine first. I'll give you money. Whatever you want. A settlement. Just drop the annulment and divorce me quietly instead. We can make this go away. I don't want your money. I want you to face consequences for once in your privileged, manipulative life. Nathan's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. You think Julian's your friend? He's using you to get back at me. The second you're not useful anymore, he'll drop you. Maybe. But at least he's honest about what he wants. He's poison, Elena. He'll destroy you too if it serves his agenda. Time's up. She started to close the door. You need to leave. Nathan caught the door. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Elena looked him directly in the eyes. You don't control me anymore. You don't get to manipulate me or gaslight me or make me doubt myself. I know exactly what you are now, and I'm done. She slammed the door in his face. Through the wood, she heard him standing there for a long moment, then his footsteps retreating down the hall. Elena's hands were shaking. Shauna wrapped an arm around her shoulders. You okay? Yeah. And surprisingly, she meant it. Yeah, I'm okay. That night, Margaret called with news. The court date was set. 2 weeks from now, a judge would hear the annulment case and decide whether Elena's marriage had been fraudulent from the start. Nathan would fight it. He'd bring lawyers and try to discredit her testimony and make her look like a bitter ex-wife making up stories for attention. But Elena had the evidence, and she had the truth. For the first time since her wedding night, she actually believed she might win. The job at Shauna's cafe paid $9 an hour plus tips, which meant Elena was making about as much as she'd been making 5 years ago when she first moved to Chicago. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd married a billionaire and somehow ended up right back where she started, except now she had legal fees and a court case hanging over her head. The cafe was called Morningside, tucked between a dry cleaner and a yoga studio in a neighborhood that was trying very hard to be trendy. The clientele was mostly young professionals who ordered oat milk lattes and worked on their laptops for hours while nursing a single cappuccino. Tips were decent on good days, non-existent on bad ones. Elena had been working there for a week when Nathan's people found her. She was wiping down tables during the lunch rush when a man in an expensive suit walked in, clearly out of place among the freelancers in hoodies and the yoga moms in Lululemon. He ordered a black coffee he didn't drink and sat at a corner table watching her. Elena ignored him for the first hour, but when he was still there at 2 o'clock, long after his coffee had gone cold, she walked over. Can I get you anything else? Elena Brooks? He pulled out a business card. I'm David Reeves with Callaway Industries. I'd like to speak with you about your pending legal action against Mr. Callaway. I have a lawyer. Talk to her. I'm not here in an official capacity. This is more of a courtesy call. He smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Callaway is prepared to offer you a very generous settlement if you agree to drop the annulment and proceed with a standard divorce instead. Not interested. You haven't heard the offer yet. Don't need to. The answer's still no. Elena started to walk away, but Reeves continued talking. $2 million, plus the penthouse on Lakeshore Drive, and a confidentiality agreement, of course. Elena stopped. $2 million. That was more money than she'd see in 10 lifetimes of waiting tables. Enough to never worry about rent or bills or whether she could afford groceries. Enough to disappear somewhere far away and start completely over. She turned back. The annulment stays. Miss Brooks, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. Your boss committed fraud. He married me under false pretenses for a business deal. No amount of money changes that. Reeves's expression hardened. You understand that if you proceed with this annulment, Mr. Callaway will have no choice but to defend himself. That means depositions, testimony, a full examination of your relationship. Every text message, every phone call, every moment of your marriage will be scrutinized. I know. He'll have to argue that you knew about the marriage clause, that you entered into this arrangement willingly for financial gain. Elena's stomach turned. That's a lie. Is it? You married a billionaire after 6 months, quit your job, moved into his penthouse, let him pay for everything. From the outside, it looks exactly like a woman who knew what she was signing up for. I didn't know anything. So you say? But Mr. Calloway's lawyers are very good at creating reasonable doubt. Reeves leaned back in his chair. Take the settlement, Ms. Brooks. $2 million to walk away quietly. It's more than fair. Tell Nathan the answer is no. And tell him to stop sending people to my workplace. This is your only offer. If you reject it now, it's off the table permanently. Good. I don't want his money. Reeves stood, pocketing his untouched coffee. You're making a mistake. Mr. Calloway always wins. Always. You're going to learn that the hard way. After he left, Elena's hands shook so badly she dropped a plate. It shattered across the tile floor, ceramic shards scattering everywhere. Her manager, Paolo, came out from the back. You okay? Fine, sorry, I'll clean it up. But she wasn't fine. Reeves's words kept circling in her head. Nathan would argue she'd known about the marriage clause, that she'd been complicit. He'd paint her as a gold digger who got cold feet and invented a story to justify leaving. And juries loved that narrative, the poor rich man victimized by the scheming woman who married him for money. She called Margaret during her break. Nathan's people came to my work, offered me $2 million to drop the annulment. Did you take it? Margaret's tone was carefully neutral. No, but they threatened to make me look like I was in on the fraud. Said Nathan's going to argue I knew about the marriage clause the whole time. Of course he is. That's his only defense. Margaret sighed. Elena, I need you to be prepared for this to get ugly. Nathan's lawyers are going to dig into everything. Your finances, your background, your relationship history. They're going to try to prove you had a pattern of seeking out wealthy men. I don't have a pattern. Nathan's the only rich guy I've ever dated. Good. That helps. But they'll still try to twist it. Make you look calculating and mercenary. A pause. You sure you want to keep going? $2 million is a lot of money. I'm sure. Okay, then we prepare for war. That night, Elena met Julian at a quiet bar near his office. He'd called earlier asking to see her, said he had updates on the case. She'd almost said no. Meeting Nathan's brother still felt weird, like she was trading one Calloway for another, but curiosity won out. Julian was already there when she arrived, sitting in a back booth nursing what looked like whiskey. He looked tired again, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that came from not sleeping enough for too long. You look like hell, Elena said, sliding into the booth across from him. So do people keep telling me? Julian pushed a drink across the table. Gin and tonic. You look like you need it. That obvious? Nathan sent someone to your work today. I'm guessing it didn't go well. Elena took a long drink. How did you know about that? I'm keeping tabs on my brother's movements. When his head of HR shows up at a cafe in Lincoln Park, it's not hard to figure out why. Julian's jaw tightened. What did he offer you? $2 million, plus a penthouse. Did you take it? Do I look like I took it? No, you look like you told him to go to hell. Julian almost smiled. Good. That'll make him nervous. He's also planning to argue I was in on the fraud, that I knew about the marriage clause and married him for money anyway. Yeah, I figured he'd go that route. It's a weak defense, but it's all he's got. Julian drained his whiskey. The emails prove otherwise. He specifically targeted you because you had no knowledge of his world, no reason to suspect anything. That's going to be hard to spin. His lawyers seemed pretty confident. Nathan's lawyers are always confident. It's what he pays them for. Julian signaled the bartender for another round. How are you holding up? Honestly? The question caught Elena off guard. Most people asked if she was okay as a formality, not really wanting a real answer. But Julian looked like he actually cared. I'm exhausted, she admitted. I'm working at a cafe making minimum wage, sleeping on my friend's couch, and waiting for a court date where my estranged husband is going to try to convince everyone I'm a gold-digging liar. So, yeah, not great. For what it's worth, I think you're incredibly brave. I don't feel brave, I feel stupid for not seeing this coming. Nathan's good at what he does. He's had years of practice manipulating people. Julian's expression darkened. After our father died,
He spent 2 years systematically destroying my credibility with the board, planted stories about my drinking, my judgment, my ability to run the company. By the time I realized what was happening, half the board thought I was unstable.
But you weren't. No. I was grieving and overwhelmed, but not unstable. Didn't matter. Nathan controlled the narrative. He paused. That's why I'm helping you. Not just to hurt him, though that's definitely a bonus, but because I know what it's like to be on the receiving end of his manipulations. And I know how hard it is to fight back when everyone believes his version of events. Elena studied him across the table. Julian was different from Nathan in almost every way. Quieter, more reserved, less polished. Where Nathan commanded rooms, Julian seemed content to fade into the background. But there was a steadiness to him that Nathan had never had, a sense that he actually meant what he said. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Sure." "Why did Nathan hate you so much? Your brothers. What happened?" Julian was quiet for a long moment, staring into his drink. "We were close once, when we were kids, but after our mom died, things changed. Dad remarried someone who preferred Nathan, made it clear I was the spare. By the time we were adults, Nathan had learned to see me as competition instead of family." "That's awful." "Yeah, well, rich families are rarely functional." Julian looked up. "When Dad died and left us the company together, I thought maybe we could finally fix things. Work together like he wanted. But Nathan saw it as a threat. He couldn't stand the idea of sharing power, even with his own brother. So he forced you out. Tried to. I'm not out yet, technically. But if his merger goes through, he'll have enough voting power to override me on everything, which is why the annulment matters so much. If that marriage clause doesn't activate, the merger dies, and we're back to equal footing." Elena twisted her glass between her hands. "Does it ever bother you? Using me to get back at him?" "Every day." Julian's honesty surprised her. "You got caught in the middle of a family war that has nothing to do with you. That's not fair, and I'm sorry for it. But I'm not sorry for giving you the tools to fight back. Even if my fighting back helps you? Even then. You deserve the truth, Elena. Whether you use it to help me or not." They sat in silence for a while, the bar filling up with after-work crowds. Elena finished her drink and ordered another, letting the alcohol warm her from the inside out. For the first time in weeks, she felt almost normal, like a regular person having drinks with a friend instead of a woman trapped in a legal nightmare of her husband's making. "What's going to happen to you?" she asked, "after the annulment goes through and the merger dies?" "Honestly, I don't know. Best case, I get enough board support to push Nathan out entirely. Worst case, we're stuck in stalemate for another few years." Julian shrugged. "Either way, I'm not losing the company. Not to him." "You really hate him." "I really do." No hesitation, no apology. "He's my brother, and I hate him. Does that make me a terrible person?" "No, it makes you human." Julian smiled, a real one this time. "You're not what I expected, you know." "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone more, He trailed off, searching for words. "Breakable, I guess. Nathan likes people he can control, but you're not that." "I was," Elena said quietly. "For a while. He made me doubt myself so much I couldn't tell what was real anymore." "But you figured it out. That's what matters." Elena wanted to believe that, but late at night, when she couldn't sleep and her thoughts spiraled, she still questioned everything. Had she really been that naive? Had the signs been there all along, hiding in plain sight while she'd been too blinded by the fairy tale to see them? Her phone buzzed. "Mia, I know you don't want to talk to me, but I need to tell you something about Nathan. It's important, please." Elena showed Julian the message. "Should I respond?" "Depends. Do you want to hear what she has to say?" "Not particularly, but if it's about the case..." Elena hesitated. "What if she knows something useful?" "Then get it out of her and cut contact again." Julian flagged down the bartender for the check. "But be careful. Mia's still emotionally invested in Nathan. Whatever she tells you might be designed to help him, not you." "You think she'd do that?" "I think people do stupid things when they're in love with the wrong person." He said it without judgment, just fact. Elena texted back. "What is it?" Mia's response came fast. "Not over text. Can we meet tomorrow? Fine. Same coffee shop, 10 a.m. Don't be late this time." She pocketed her phone and stood. "I should get back." Early shift tomorrow. I'll drive you. You don't have to eat. It's late and you're 2 drinks in. I'm driving you. Julian's car was sleek and expensive, the kind of vehicle Elena had gotten used to during her brief time as a Calloway wife. But unlike Nathan's cars, which had always felt like extensions of his ego, Julian's car was just transportation, functional and forgettable. They drove through Chicago in comfortable silence, the city lights streaking past the windows. Elena found herself relaxing into the leather seat, the exhaustion of the day catching up with her all at once. "Thank you," she said as they pulled up outside Shauna's building. "For everything. The evidence, the lawyer, the ride. All of it." "You're welcome." Julian put the car in park. "Elena, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "If things were different, if Nathan hadn't been my brother, if you two had met some other way, do you think you would have fallen for him anyway? Without all the manipulation?" Elena thought about it. "No. The person I fell for doesn't exist. Nathan created a character designed specifically to appeal to me. The real Nathan, the one who sees people as tools and marriage as a business transaction, I never would have looked at him twice." "Good. That's good." Julian looked like he wanted to say something else, but changed his mind. "Get some sleep. Court's in less than 2 weeks." Elena climbed out of the car and watched him drive away, then headed upstairs. Shauna was already asleep, so she moved quietly through the apartment, changing into pajamas and settling onto the couch that had become her bed. She tried to sleep, but her mind kept spinning. Tomorrow she'd meet with Mia, and in less than 2 weeks she'd be in court facing Nathan across a courtroom. Somewhere in between, she had to keep working and pretending her life wasn't falling apart and preparing for her entire marriage to be dissected in front of a judge. It was too much. All of it. But she didn't have a choice except to keep going. The next morning, Mia was actually on time. Elena arrived at the coffee shop to find her sister already there, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, no makeup, dark circles under her eyes. For once, she didn't look like she'd stepped out of a magazine. She looked wrecked. "Thanks for coming," Mia said as Elena sat down. "You have 5 minutes. Talk. Nathan's planning something." Mia twisted her hands together, that old nervous habit. "I don't know exactly what, but he's been on the phone with his lawyers constantly, and yesterday he asked me to lie for him." Elena's stomach dropped. "Lie about what?" "About our relationship. He wants me to testify that you knew about us, that we told you we were involved before the wedding, and you said you didn't care because you were only marrying him for money." The words hit like a punch. "And are you going to do it?" "No, that's why I'm telling you. I'm not lying for him anymore." Mia's eyes were red, like she'd been crying. "I know you don't believe me, but I never meant for any of this to happen. I was stupid and selfish, and I convinced myself that what Nathan and I had was real. But it wasn't. He used me the same way he used you. You're just figuring that out now?" "I know. I'm an idiot." Mia wiped at her eyes. "But I'm not going to let him destroy you to save himself. I'll testify for you if you need me to. Tell the truth about when the affair started, how he manipulated both of us." Elena wanted to believe her, but trusting Mia again felt impossible after everything that had happened. "Why now?" she asked. "Why suddenly grow a conscience?" "Because I called him yesterday, after you and I talked last time. I told him I couldn't do this anymore, that I felt guilty about what we'd done to you." Mia's voice cracked. "And you know what he said? He laughed. Said I was being dramatic and that I should remember he could destroy my career with a single phone call if I didn't stay in line." "What career?" "You work retail. I've been applying to PR firms. Nathan knows the hiring managers at 3 of the companies I interviewed with. He said if I don't cooperate, he'll make sure I never work in this city again." Mia looked directly at Elena. "That's when I realized you were right. He doesn't love me. He never did. I was just convenient." Elena let that sink in. Nathan had threatened Mia the same way he'd tried to manipulate Elena, find the pressure point and push until the person breaks. It was his signature move. "So you want to help me now because he turned on you," Elena said flatly. "I want to help you because it's the right thing to do. And because I'm sorry. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I am." Mia pulled out her phone. "I have text messages, voicemails, proof that the affair started 2 months before you even met Nathan. If that helps your case, it's yours." Elena took the phone, scrolling through months of messages between Mia and Nathan. Sweet at first, then increasingly desperate on Mia's end as Nathan grew distant. The timeline matched what Julian had shown her. Nathan and Mia had been casually involved. Then Nathan had met Elena and shifted his focus while keeping Mia as backup. "Send these to my lawyer," Elena said, writing down Margaret's email. "All of them. Don't leave anything out." "Okay." Mia hesitated. "For what it's worth, I know you probably hate me. I deserve it. But you're my sister, and I should have protected you instead of betraying you. I'm sorry I didn't." "Yeah, you should have," Elena stood. "Thanks for the evidence, but we're not okay. We're probably never going to be okay." "I know." Elena left before Mia could say anything else. Outside, she called Margaret. "Mia's sending you evidence. Text messages between her and Nathan that prove the affair predated my relationship with him." "That's good. That corroborates the emails Julian provided." Margaret paused. "How are you doing with all this? Emotionally?" "I'm fine." "Elena?" "I'm handling it. I'll see you in court." She hung up before Margaret could push further. The truth was, she had no idea how she was doing emotionally. Some days she felt strong, determined, ready to fight. Other days she felt like she was barely holding herself together with tape and caffeine. Today was somewhere in between. Her shift at the cafe started in an hour. Elena walked slowly, trying to clear her head before she had to put on her customer service smile and pretend everything was fine. Her phone buzzed. Julian. "Heard from Margaret about Mia's evidence." "That's huge." "You okay?" "Define okay. Fair point. Drink later?" "Can't. Have to work a double." "Tomorrow then." "My place." "I'll cook." Elena stared at the message, surprised. Julian cooking dinner for her felt personal in a way their previous meetings hadn't. Less about the case and more about what? Friendship? Something else? "You don't have to do that." "I want to. Plus you look like you could use a home-cooked meal." "How would you know how I look? Are you stalking me? You posted a selfie on Instagram yesterday." "You look tired." Elena had forgotten about that. A stupid picture Shauna had insisted on taking, trying to make her smile. She'd posted it without thinking, not considering who might see it. "Fine. Tomorrow." "What time?" 7. "I'll text you the address." She pocketed her phone and tried not to think too hard about why the invitation made her feel lighter than she had in days. Work was brutal. The cafe was understaffed and overrun with customers, everyone demanding complicated drinks and getting annoyed when they took more than 30 seconds to make. By the time Elena's double shift ended, her feet ached and she smelled like coffee grounds and burnt milk. Shauna picked her up, took one look at her, and drove straight to a liquor store. "You need wine," Shauna declared, emerging with 2 bottles. "Possibly 3. We're having a girls' night." "I have to meet Julian tomorrow." "Which is tomorrow." "Tonight, we drink and watch bad reality TV and forget about billionaire brothers and court cases and everything else." Elena didn't argue. She was too tired to argue. They ordered pizza and camped out on the couch, working their way through a bottle of cheap red wine while a dating show played on the TV. It was exactly what Elena needed. Normal, mindless, uncomplicated. "Can I ask you something?" Shauna said during a commercial break. "Sure." "What's going on with you and Julian?" "Nothing's going on. He's helping with the case." "Right, and having drinks with you, and inviting you to his place for dinner." Shauna raised an eyebrow. "That's a lot of helping." "We're friends, I think. Maybe." Elena frowned. "I don't know what we are." "Do you want to be more than friends?" "He's Nathan's brother." "That's not an answer." Elena took a long drink of wine. "I don't know. Part of me thinks it would be insane to get involved with another Calloway. But Julian's not like Nathan. He's honest, at least. And he doesn't make me feel like I'm losing my mind." "Low bar." "Yeah, well, that's where I'm at." Elena stared at the TV without really seeing it. "I'm not looking for a relationship anyway. I'm barely surviving as it is." "Fair. Just don't close yourself off completely. Julian might surprise you. Or he might be exactly like his brother underneath, and I'm too stupid to see it." "You're not stupid. You're traumatized. There's a difference." Shauna refilled both their glasses. "But for what it's worth, I don't think Julian's playing you. I think he actually cares." Elena wanted to believe that, but trusting her judgment about men felt impossible right now. They finished the bottle and started on the second, the TV show dissolving into background noise as they talked about everything except the case. Old jobs, bad dates, the future neither of them could quite picture. By the time Elena finally passed out on the couch, she felt almost human again. The next day, she took extra care getting ready to go to Julian's. Not because it meant anything, she told herself. Just because she'd been living in work clothes and stress for 2 weeks, and maybe she wanted to feel put together for once. She wore jeans and a sweater that Shauna insisted made her look less like she was falling apart. Minimal makeup, hair pulled back, normal, casual.
Julian's place was in the West Loop, a converted loft with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. Elena had expected something flashy, billionaire-level ostentatious. Instead, it was surprisingly understated. Comfortable furniture, books everywhere, toys scattered in one corner. "Sorry about the mess," Julian said, letting her in. "My son was here this weekend and I haven't had a chance to clean up." "You have a son?" Elena hadn't known that. "Yeah, Charlie. He's 5. Julian picked up a handful of toy cars, depositing them in a bin. "He lives with his grandparents mostly. My wife, ex-wife, she died 2 years ago. Car accident. Her parents didn't think I could handle raising him alone, and honestly, they were probably right. I'm sorry, I didn't know." "It's okay. It's not something I talk about much." Julian headed into the kitchen. "Wine, beer, I have juice boxes if you prefer." Elena laughed despite herself. "Wine's good." She watched him cook, actual cooking, not just reheating takeout. He moved around the kitchen with easy competence, chopping vegetables and stirring sauce and multitasking in a way that suggested he did this regularly. "This is impressive," she said. "What, you thought billionaires couldn't cook?" "I thought Nathan couldn't cook. Assumed it was a family trait. Nathan can't do anything that doesn't directly benefit him. Cooking for yourself is too egalitarian." Julian handed her a glass of wine. "He had private chefs growing up. I learned to cook in college because I got tired of cafeteria food and couldn't afford to eat out every night." "Wait, couldn't afford? Your family's loaded." "My father believed in character building. I got an allowance like everyone else, but it wasn't enough to live lavishly." Julian turned back to the stove. "Nathan hated it. Spent the whole time complaining about how unfair it was that we had money but couldn't use it. I actually kind of appreciated it. Made me more self-sufficient." Elena sat at the counter watching him work. "You're really different from him." Thank God for that. They ate at the small dining table by the windows, Chicago spreading out below them in the gathering dusk. The food was good, pasta with homemade sauce, salad, bread that Julian admitted he'd bought instead of made. "I have limits," he said with a smile. It felt surreal, sitting here having dinner like they were normal people instead of 2 people caught up in a legal battle against a man they both had reason to hate. Elena kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Julian to reveal some ulterior motive or hidden agenda. But he just poured more wine and asked about her day and listened when she talked about the cafe and Shauna and the tiny apartment that was starting to feel less temporary and more like her actual life. "Can I ask you something?" Julian said eventually. "Everyone keeps asking me that." "Yes, you can ask." "What are you going to do after? After the annulment goes through and this is all over?" Elena hadn't let herself think that far ahead. "I don't know. Find a better job, I guess. Save money. Figure out who I am when I'm not defined by Nathan." "You were never defined by Nathan. He just tried to make you think you were." "Easy to say. Harder to believe." Julian leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You know what I see when I look at you? Someone who walked away from a billionaire with nothing but her principles. Someone who could have taken $2 million to make this all go away, but chose to fight instead. That's not weakness, Elena. That's strength. Or stupidity. They're not mutually exclusive." He smiled. "But I'm betting on strength." Elena felt something shift between them, the air getting heavier. Julian was looking at her differently now, and she realized with a jolt that Shauna had been right. There was something here, some connection that went beyond their shared hatred of Nathan. "I should go," she said, standing abruptly. Julian didn't argue, just walked her to the door. "Thanks for coming. I know it's weird, all of this." "Yeah, it is." Elena hesitated. "But thanks for dinner, and for being honest, I'm not used to that anymore." "Get used to it. Honesty's kind of my thing."
She left before she could do something stupid like kiss him or ask him what this was, or admit that she'd been thinking about him more than was probably appropriate given the circumstances. The court date was 8 days away. Elena threw herself into preparing, meeting with Margaret almost daily to go over testimony and evidence and what to expect from Nathan's lawyers. They practiced her responses to hostile questions, rehearsed her emotional reactions, made sure she could keep her composure even when being accused of being a liar and a gold digger. Remember, Margaret said during one particularly brutal practice session, they're going to try to break you, make you cry or lose your temper or say something you'll regret. Don't let them. Stay calm, stick to the facts, and trust the evidence. What if the judge doesn't believe me? The evidence speaks for itself. Your job is just to support it with your testimony. 3 days before court, Nathan's final offer arrived. $5 million and a signed NDA. Walk away, stay quiet, let him save face. Elena sent back a one-word response through Margaret. No. The night before the hearing, she couldn't sleep. She lay on Shauna's couch, staring at the ceiling, running through everything that could go wrong. What if the judge sided with Nathan? What if the evidence wasn't enough? What if she got up there and fell apart under cross-examination? Her phone buzzed at 2 a.m. Julian, you awake? Unfortunately. Me too. Nervous? Terrified. You're going to be fine, better than fine. You're going to destroy him. How do you know? Because you're telling the truth and he's not. Truth wins eventually. That's idealistic. I prefer optimistic. Meet me for breakfast before court? 7 a.m.? Elena hesitated, then typed, okay. She finally fell asleep around 4, and when her alarm went off at 6, she felt like she'd been hit by a truck. But she got up, got dressed in the conservative suit Margaret had helped her pick out, and met Julian at a diner 3 blocks from the courthouse. He looked as tired as she felt, but he smiled when he saw her. Ready? No, but I'm doing it anyway. That's the spirit. They ate breakfast mostly in silence, the weight of the day ahead pressing down on both of them. At 8:30, they walked to the courthouse together, Margaret meeting them on the steps. Remember what we practiced, Margaret said. Stay calm, stick to the truth, don't let them provoke you. Elena nodded, her throat too tight to speak. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than she'd expected. Nathan was already there with his lawyers, 3 of them in expensive suits clustered around him like a protective wall. He saw Elena and his expression went cold, any pretense of affection or concern vanishing. This was the real Nathan, the one she'd married without knowing he existed. The judge entered and everyone stood. Elena's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Case number 2024-D-8847, the bailiff called. Brooks versus Calloway, petition for annulment based on fraud. This was it. No turning back now. The battle was about to begin. Margaret stood first, straightening her papers with the kind of calm that came from years of walking into courtrooms and dismantling lies. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no-nonsense demeanor, looked between the 2 legal teams like she'd already decided this was going to be a long day. Ms. Chen, you're petitioning for annulment on grounds of fraud. Proceed. Margaret's opening was surgical. She laid out the timeline, how Nathan had deliberately targeted Elena, how the marriage clause existed, how every step of their relationship had been engineered for a business outcome. She presented the emails without dramatics, just cold facts that spoke for themselves. Nathan's lead attorney, a man named Richard Voss, who probably charged more per hour than Elena made in a month, countered with the expected defense. Ms. Brooks had entered the marriage willingly. There was no proof she'd been unaware of Mr. Calloway's business interests. The emails were taken out of context, private correspondence never meant to be seen by outside parties. His client had made mistakes in his personal life, certainly, but fraud was a serious accusation that required serious proof. It went on for 2 hours. Procedural arguments, objections, legal technicalities that made Elena's head spin. Then Margaret called her first witness. Julian took the stand. Nathan's entire body went rigid. He leaned over and whispered something furious to Voss, who shook his head. Apparently they hadn't expected Julian to actually testify. Julian swore in and sat down, looking relaxed in a way Elena knew was calculated. He'd grown up in this world, knew how to play the game. Margaret walked him through his relationship with Nathan, the family business, the marriage clause. Julian's testimony was measured, factual, devastating. He explained how the clause worked, why it mattered, how Nathan had spent months planning a marriage specifically designed to trigger it. "And you have evidence of this planning?" Margaret asked. "Yes. Email correspondence between my brother and his legal team discussing strategy for finding and securing a suitable spouse within a specific timeline." Voss stood. Objection. The witness obtained this correspondence through illegal means. "The emails were sent from company servers," Julian said calmly before the judge could rule. "As a 50% shareholder in Callaway Industries, I have legal access to all company communications. Nothing illegal about it." The judge looked at Voss. Overruled. "Continue, Ms. Chen." Margaret walked Julian through the emails, having him authenticate each one. By the time she finished, the picture was clear. Nathan had treated finding a wife the same way he'd treat any other business acquisition. Research the target, identify weaknesses, execute the plan. Voss's cross-examination was aggressive, trying to paint Julian as a disgruntled brother with an axe to grind, someone who'd manipulate evidence to hurt Nathan. But Julian didn't take the bait, just answered every question with the same calm precision. "Isn't it true you've been trying to force Mr. Callaway out of the family business for years?" "No. I've been trying to maintain my equal position as co-owner while my brother systematically attempted to sideline me." "And you see this annulment as a way to sabotage his business deals?" "I see this annulment as a way to expose fraud. What happens to his business deals is a consequence of his own choices." When Julian stepped down, he caught Elena's eye. The look he gave her was steady, reassuring. "You've got this." Margaret called Mia next. Elena hadn't been sure Mia would actually show up. But there she was, walking to the stand in a simple dress, no jewelry, her face bare of makeup. She looked young and scared and nothing like the polished woman who'd been sleeping with Nathan for months. Margaret kept it simple. When did the affair start? Before Elena and Nathan met. How long did it continue? Through the engagement and into the marriage. Did Nathan ever discuss his reasons for marrying Elena? Yes. He said it was strategic, that the marriage would help secure a business deal, that he'd divorce her after a year. Mia's voice shook as she answered, but she didn't cry, didn't break down. She just told the truth in a flat, exhausted voice that made it clear she'd finally run out of excuses for herself. Voss tried to discredit her, suggest she was lying out of jealousy or spite. But Mia had brought the text messages, months of correspondence that corroborated every word she'd said. The judge reviewed them during a brief recess, her expression growing grimmer with each page. When they reconvened, Margaret called her final witness. Elena. Walking to the stand felt like walking through water, everything moving in slow motion. She swore in with a hand that wouldn't stop shaking, sat down, and tried to remember everything Margaret had coached her on. Stay calm. Stick to the facts. Don't let them provoke you. Margaret started gently, walking her through how she'd met Nathan, the courtship, the proposal. Elena talked about the diner, the flowers Nathan had sent, the way he'd made her feel special after years of barely surviving. She explained how she'd quit her job and given up her apartment, how she'd trusted him completely because he'd never given her reason not to. And on your wedding night, what happened? Elena took a breath. He said my sister's name. While we were... She stopped, her face heating. He called me Mia. And what did Mr. Callaway say when you confronted him? He told me I'd imagined it, that I was exhausted and stressed and hearing things that weren't there. He tried to convince me I was losing my mind. But you knew what you'd heard. Yes. Margaret walked her through the confrontation, Nathan's admission, the emails Julian had shown her. Elena's voice stayed steady through most of it, only wavering when Margaret asked how she'd felt learning the marriage had been planned as a business strategy. Like everything I thought I knew was a lie, Elena said quietly. Like I'd been so desperate for someone to love me that I'd ignored every warning sign and let myself become a tool in someone else's plan. Across the courtroom, Nathan's jaw tightened. Margaret finished, and Voss stood for cross-examination. Elena braced herself. Ms. Brooks, you claim you had no knowledge of Mr. Callaway's wealth when you met him. Is that correct? I knew he had money. I didn't know how much. But you knew he owned hotels. He mentioned it, yes. And yet you expect us to believe that a struggling waitress who could barely make rent didn't see marrying a hotel mogul as a financial opportunity? Elena felt her anger spike, forced it down. I didn't marry him for money. I married him because I thought he loved me. How convenient. You marry a billionaire, live in luxury for 6 months, then when the relationship sours, you claim fraud to avoid looking like a gold digger. That's not what happened, isn't it? You have no prenuptial agreement, which means in a standard divorce, you'd be entitled to nothing after such a short marriage. But an annulment based on fraud? That opens up possibilities for damages, doesn't it? Margaret objected, but the judge allowed it. Elena looked Voss directly in the eye. I don't want damages. I don't want his money. I just want the truth on record. The truth being that you're an innocent victim who had no idea what you were getting into? The truth being that your client is a manipulative liar who married me to close a business deal and thought he could get away with it. You're aware that's a serious accusation. I'm aware that I have emails proving it. Voss tried several more angles, but Elena didn't budge. She'd spent 2 weeks preparing for this, and more importantly, she was done being pushed around. When he finally gave up and sat down, Elena felt like she'd run a marathon. The judge called a 30-minute recess. Elena made it to the bathroom before her hands started shaking again. Margaret found her there, splashing water on her face. You did great, Margaret said. Really great. Voss barely laid a finger on you. It doesn't feel great. It never does. But you held your ground, and that's what matters. Margaret checked her watch. They're going to call Nathan next. You don't have to watch if you don't want to. But Elena did want to watch. She needed to see Nathan under oath, needed to watch him try to lie his way out of documented evidence. Back in the courtroom, Nathan took the stand with the same confidence he brought to everything else. Voss walked him through a carefully constructed narrative. Yes, the marriage clause existed, but it hadn't been his primary motivation. Yes, he'd been involved with Mia, but it had ended before he married Elena. Yes, the emails looked bad out of context, but they were simply him discussing strategy with his lawyers, not evidence of fraud. He was good. Elena had to give him that. He looked sincere, sounded reasonable, played the role of a man who'd made mistakes but hadn't committed crimes. Then Margaret stood for cross-examination. Mr. Calloway, you testified that the marriage clause wasn't your primary motivation for marrying Ms. Brooks. What was your primary motivation? I loved her. I still do. You loved her so much you were sleeping with her sister throughout your engagement? Nathan's expression flickered. That was a mistake. I ended it. According to phone records and text messages, you were in contact with Mia Brooks as recently as 3 days ago. Is that your definition of ending it? I was trying to convince her not to testify against me. By threatening her employment prospects? I never threatened her. Margaret pulled out a transcript of a voicemail Nathan had left Mia. His own voice, cold and clear, telling her that if she testified, she'd never work in Chicago again. The courtroom went silent as it played. Still maintain you didn't threaten her? Margaret asked. Nathan's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. Margaret moved on, walking Nathan through the emails, making him admit to each one. Yes, he'd discussed finding a suitable wife with his lawyers. Yes, Elena had fit the profile they'd outlined. Yes, he'd moved quickly because of the merger timeline. And at any point during this process, did you disclose to Ms. Brooks that marrying you would trigger a business clause worth hundreds of millions of dollars? I didn't think it was relevant. You didn't think your bride deserved to know she was part of a business transaction? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Mr. Calloway? Explain to the court how deliberately targeting a financially vulnerable woman, manipulating her into marriage, and using that marriage to secure a corporate merger isn't fraud. Nathan's composure finally cracked. I made a mistake bringing business considerations into my personal life, but I did care about Elena. That wasn't fake. Care about her enough to be honest with her? I was going to tell her, eventually. After the merger closed and you no longer needed her? That's not after you'd secured your business deal and could discard her without consequences? I never planned to discard her. Margaret pulled out another email, this one dated 2 weeks after the wedding. Nathan discussing divorce timelines with his lawyer, calculating the minimum amount of time he'd need to stay married to satisfy the clause. This email suggests otherwise. Nathan had no answer for that. He sat there, jaw tight, while Margaret systematically destroyed every lie he'd told. By the time she finished, he looked less like a powerful CEO and more like a cornered animal. The judge called for closing arguments. Margaret's was concise. The evidence showed clear fraud, a deliberate scheme to manipulate an unsuspecting woman into a marriage designed solely to benefit Nathan's business interests. The annulment should be granted immediately. Voss's closing was desperate, grasping at technicalities and asking the court to consider that while Mr. Calloway had made errors in judgment, fraud required intent to deceive, and his client had genuinely developed feelings for Ms. Brooks over the course of their relationship. The judge looked unimpressed. "I'll take this under advisement and issue a ruling within 48 hours, she said. Court is adjourned. Everyone stood. Elena felt like her legs might give out. Margaret gripped her elbow, steadying her. "That went as well as we could have hoped," Margaret said quietly. "The judge heard everything. Now we wait." Outside the courtroom, Julian was waiting. He pulled Elena into a quick hug and she let herself lean into it for just a moment. "You were incredible in there," he said. "I threw up twice during recess." "And yet you still went back in and faced him down. That's incredible." Nathan emerged from the courtroom surrounded by his lawyers, all of them talking urgently. He saw Elena and Julian standing together, and his expression went ice cold. For a second, Elena thought he might actually approach them, but Voss grabbed his arm and steered him toward the elevator. "Come on," Julian said. "Let's get you out of here." They went to a quiet restaurant, the kind of place where no one would recognize them or care about their drama. Elena ordered wine and didn't touch it, too wired to drink, too exhausted to eat. "What happens now?" she asked. "We wait for the judge's ruling," Margaret said. "But based on the evidence and Nathan's testimony, I think we're in good shape." "And if she rules in his favor?" "She won't, but if she does, we appeal. We keep fighting until we win." Elena nodded, trying to absorb that. 2 days. She just had to survive 2 more days. Julian drove her back to Shauna's apartment. In the car, he said, "Whatever happens, you did the right thing. Standing up to him, fighting back. That took courage most people don't have." "I didn't feel courageous. I felt terrified the entire time." "Courage isn't not being scared. It's being scared and doing it anyway." Julian pulled up outside the building. "Get some rest. Try not to think about it for a few hours." "Easier said than done." "I know." He hesitated, then reached over and squeezed her hand. "You're not alone in this, okay? Whatever the ruling is, you're not alone." Elena went upstairs to find Shauna had strung up a banner that said, "Justice for Elena," in marker on printer paper. She'd also bought champagne and ordered pizza. "Celebrating early?" Elena asked. "Celebrating you surviving the day without punching Nathan in his smug face. That deserves recognition." Shauna popped the champagne. "Now tell me everything," Elena told her, reliving the whole day. Shauna cheered when she got to the part where Margaret destroyed Nathan's testimony, groaned when Elena described Voss's cross-examination, and looked ready to commit violence when Elena mentioned Nathan's voicemail threatening Mia. "He's such a piece of shit," Shauna said. "I hope the judge throws the book at him." "The judge doesn't throw books in civil court. She just rules." "Then I hope she rules so hard Nathan feels it in his soul." They drank champagne and ate pizza and watched mindless TV, and Elena tried not to check her phone every 5 minutes to see if Margaret had texted. The next day crawled by. Elena went to work, served coffee, smiled at customers, and tried to act normal while her entire future hung in the balance. Julian texted her throughout the day, stupid memes, updates from his own lawyer, a photo of his son covered in spaghetti sauce with the caption, "Parenting is glamorous." It made her smile despite everything. The ruling came down at 4:30 on the second day. Elena was at work when her phone rang. Margaret. "We won," Margaret said without preamble. "The judge granted the annulment, ruled that Nathan had committed fraud by deliberately concealing his true intentions for the marriage. It's over, Elena. You're free." Elena had to sit down. Her manager, Paolo, took one look at her face and told her to take the rest of the day off. She called Julian from outside the cafe, her hand shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. "We won," she said when he answered. "I know. Margaret called me." "Elena, you did it. You actually did it. I can't believe it's over." "Believe it. You're free. The marriage is void, Nathan's merger is dead, and his reputation is destroyed. It's over." Elena started crying then.
Right there on the sidewalk, huge gasping sobs that had been building for weeks. People walking past gave her weird looks, but she didn't care. It was over. She'd faced down a billionaire with unlimited resources and won. "Where are you?" Julian asked. "Lincoln Park, outside the cafe." "Stay there. I'm coming to get you." He showed up 20 minutes later, pulled her into his arms, and let her cry on his expensive shirt without complaint. When she finally pulled herself together, he stepped back and smiled. "Proud of you," he said simply. "I couldn't have done it without you, without the evidence. You would have found another way. You're stubborn like that." Elena laughed, wiping her eyes. "Is that a compliment?" "Absolutely." They went to celebrate, Elena, Julian, Margaret, and Shauna, at a bar that served overpriced cocktails and had excellent jazz playing in the background. Margaret left after one drink, professional to the end, but the rest of them stayed until closing. "To Elena," Julian said, raising his glass, "who proved that sometimes the good guys actually win. To taking down billionaire assholes," Shauna added. "To never trusting a man who calls you the wrong name," Elena said, and they all laughed. The news broke the next day. The annulment, the fraud, the emails, all of it splashed across business journals and gossip sites. Nathan's company's stock dropped 12% in one day. The merger fell through entirely. Board members started calling for his resignation. Elena didn't feel victorious watching his empire crumble. She just felt tired and sad and grateful it was finally over. Mia called. Elena almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "I saw the news," Mia said. "I'm glad you won. Thanks for testifying. It was the least I could do after everything." A pause. "I know you said we're not okay, and that's fair, but I'm getting help. Therapy, trying to figure out why I make such terrible choices. I thought you should know." "Good. I'm glad. Maybe someday we can—" Mia stopped. "Never mind. That's not fair to ask. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. Really, genuinely sorry." "I know you are," Elena said. And she did. She could hear it in Mia's voice, the real regret that came from finally understanding the damage she'd caused. "But I need time. A lot of time." "I understand." After they hung up, Elena sat with the conversation for a while. Maybe someday she and Mia would find a way to be sisters again. Or maybe they wouldn't. Either way was okay. She didn't owe Mia forgiveness on any timeline but her own. 3 weeks after the ruling, Elena got a job offer from a small PR firm that had read about the case. They needed someone with her kind of resilience, they said, someone who could handle pressure and stand up to powerful people. The salary was more than she'd made at the cafe, enough to afford her own apartment. Not anything fancy, just a studio in a decent neighborhood. But it was hers. No one else's name on the lease. No strings attached. Shauna helped her move in, along with Julian and his son Charlie, who was delighted to help carry boxes, even though he was too small to actually lift anything. "This is nice," Julian said, looking around the empty studio. "Good space." "It's tiny." "It's yours, that's what matters." Charlie tugged on Elena's hand. "Are you my dad's girlfriend?" Elena choked on her water. Julian turned bright red. "Charlie, buddy, that's not— We're friends. Elena and I are friends." "But you like her," Charlie said with the brutal honesty of 5-year-olds. "You smile different when you talk about her." "Out of the mouths of babes," Shauna muttered, grinning. Julian picked up his son. "How about we go get pizza and let the adults talk?" "But I want to know if—" "Pizza, Charlie, with extra cheese." After they left, Shauna raised an eyebrow at Elena. "So, you two going to talk about whatever that was?" "There's nothing to talk about." "Right, which is why he drove an hour out of his way to help you move into a studio apartment. We're friends. Friends who have dinner together twice a week and text constantly and look at each other like nobody else exists?" Elena threw a pillow at her. "Shut up." But Shauna was right, and Elena knew it. Something had shifted between her and Julian over the past few months. Something that felt dangerous and terrifying and also kind of wonderful. When Julian came back with Charlie and pizza, Elena pulled him aside. "Can we talk? After Charlie goes to sleep?" Julian's expression was carefully neutral. "Sure." "About what?" "About whatever this is. Us. If there is an us. I don't know. I'm terrible at this." You're not terrible at anything. Julian smiled, and it was the smile Charlie had mentioned, the one that was different, softer. Yeah, let's talk. They put Charlie to bed in Elena's new bedroom. She insisted, said she'd sleep on the couch, and Shauna made herself scarce with exaggerated obviousness. Julian and Elena sat on the floor of her empty living room, backs against the wall, knees almost touching. I'm not good at this either, Julian said, talking about feelings. My ex-wife, I mean. She used to say I kept everything locked up so tight I'd implode eventually. Was she right? Probably. I loved her, but I wasn't good at showing it, and then she died and I never got the chance to get better at it. Elena reached over and took his hand. I'm scared, she admitted, of getting involved with someone again, of trusting my judgment when it was so wrong about Nathan. Your judgment wasn't wrong. Nathan lied. There's a difference. I know, but it doesn't feel different. She looked at their joined hands. And you're his brother. That makes this complicated. I know, believe me, I've thought about that. Julian squeezed her hand. But I'm not Nathan. I'm nothing like Nathan, and what I feel for you has nothing to do with him. What do you feel for me? Honestly? I'm not sure yet. But I know I look forward to seeing you. I know I think about you way too much. And I know that when the judge ruled in your favor, the first thing I felt was relief that you'd be okay, and the second thing was hope that maybe now we could figure out what this is without Nathan hanging over everything. Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. I don't want to rush into anything. I need time to figure out who I am when I'm not defined by someone else. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. They sat there for a while, not talking, just being. It felt easy in a way that nothing with Nathan ever had. No games, no manipulation, just two broken people trying to figure out if they could help each other heal. Over the next few months, Elena built a life that was entirely her own. She got promoted at work, made friends with her coworkers, started running in the mornings because it helped clear her head. She went to therapy and worked through the trauma of Nathan's manipulation and slowly learned to trust herself again. And Julian was there, but not in a way that felt suffocating or controlling. He was just present. They had dinner once a week, went to museums on weekends, took Charlie to the zoo. Sometimes Elena stayed over at Julian's place, sleeping in the guest room, waking up to the sound of Charlie demanding pancakes. It felt like building something real, brick by brick, with no rush and no pressure. 6 months after the annulment, Nathan's company forced him to step down as CEO. The board installed an interim leader and began the process of restructuring. Julian was offered his old position back, a full partnership with real power. I'm thinking about saying no, he told Elena over dinner. Why? Because that company is toxic. My father built it on manipulation and control, Nathan made it worse, and I'm not sure it's worth saving. Julian pushed his food around his plate. I'm thinking about selling my shares and doing something else. Something that doesn't involve backstabbing and corporate warfare. Like what? I don't know yet, but I've got time to figure it out. Elena understood that. The need to start fresh, to build something that wasn't tainted by the past. She'd been doing the same thing for months. A year after her wedding night, Elena stood in her apartment, a bigger place now, a one-bedroom in a building with a doorman, and looked at her life. She had a job she was good at, friends who actually cared about her, a relationship with Julian that was slow and careful and built on honesty. She had a therapist who helped her work through the anger and the shame and the lingering fear that she was still the naive girl who'd fallen for Nathan's lies. But mostly, she had herself back. The Elena who'd been buried under Nathan's manipulation and gaslighting and control. The one who was stronger than she'd thought, more resilient, capable of surviving things she never imagined she'd have to face. Julian knocked on her door, holding takeout and a bottle of wine. Charlie was with his grandparents for the weekend, which meant they had 2 whole days to themselves. I have news, Julian said as they ate. Good news or bad news? Good, I think. I sold my shares in Callaway Industries, all of them. Elena nearly dropped her fork. You what? Sold them, to a venture capital firm that specializes in restructuring dysfunctional companies. They're going to clean house, get rid of everyone who enabled Nathan's behavior, start fresh. Julian smiled. I'm officially done with that world. How does it feel? Terrifying. Liberating. Both. He reached across the table and took her hand.
But I figured if you could walk away from everything and start over, so could I. What are you going to do now? I have some ideas. Smaller investments, companies I actually believe in. Maybe some teaching. There's a business school that's been asking me to do guest lectures. And I want to spend more time with Charlie. Actually be present instead of always distracted by corporate drama.
That sounds good. Really good. What about you? Still liking the PR job? I love it. They're talking about making me a partner in a few years if I keep performing well. Elena squeezed his hand. I never thought I'd have this. A career I care about, a place that's mine, a life that feels real. You deserve all of it.
They finished dinner and moved to the couch. Elena curled against Julian's side while some movie played on TV. It was comfortable, familiar, the kind of easy intimacy that came from actually knowing someone instead of just knowing the version of themselves they wanted you to see. Can I tell you something? Elena said during a commercial. I think I'm falling in love with you, maybe have been for a while. And that terrifies me because last time I fell in love, it destroyed my life. Julian was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I'm falling in love with you too. Have been since before the annulment, though I tried really hard not to because the timing was terrible and you needed space and I didn't want to be another man pressuring you into something you weren't ready for. You're nothing like Nathan, I know. But you needed to know that too. To see it for yourself. Julian tilted her chin up so she was looking at him. I'm not perfect, Elena. I'm going to mess up sometimes. But I promise I'll never lie to you, I'll never manipulate you, and I'll never make you doubt yourself. That's all I need, Elena said, and kissed him. It was different from kissing Nathan had been. Slower, gentler, built on months of trust instead of manufactured chemistry. It felt like coming home to a place she'd never been before. They took things slow after that. No rushing, no grand gestures, just steady forward motion. Julian met Shauna officially and won her over by bringing her favorite pastries and genuinely listening when she talked. Elena got closer with Charlie, learning his favorite books and his elaborate rules for playing dinosaurs. They took a trip to the coast, just the three of them. And Elena realized somewhere between building sandcastles and teaching Charlie to body surf that this was what family was supposed to feel like. 2 years after the annulment, Elena and Julian got married in a small ceremony at City Hall. No crystal chandeliers, no society reporters, no guest list full of people they barely knew, just Shauna and Charlie and Julian's closest friends and a judge who smiled the whole time. Afterwards, they went to the same diner where Nathan had first approached Elena all those years ago. It was different now, under new management, renovated, but something about it felt right, coming full circle to where it had started, but this time with the right person. You ever regret it? Julian asked over coffee. Getting involved with my family in the first place? The whole nightmare with Nathan? Elena thought about it. The pain, the betrayal, the months of feeling like she was losing her mind, the court battle, the public humiliation, the slow process of rebuilding herself from scratch. No, she said finally. I mean, I wish Nathan hadn't been a manipulative sociopath, but if none of that had happened, I wouldn't have learned how strong I actually am. I wouldn't have learned to trust my own judgment, and I wouldn't have you. That's a very mature perspective. I have a very good therapist. Julian laughed. Charlie demanded more pancakes. Shauna showed up late and hungover, complaining about the early hour. It was chaotic and imperfect, and nothing like the fairy tale wedding Elena had once thought she wanted. It was better. Because here's what Elena had learned. Real love isn't about grand romantic gestures, or expensive weddings, or sweeping someone off their feet. It's about showing up every day and being honest, even when honesty is hard. It's about choosing someone repeatedly, not just once in front of witnesses. It's about building trust brick by brick until you have something solid enough to weather the inevitable storms. Nathan had offered her a fairy tale that was really just a business transaction in disguise. Julian offered her something infinitely more valuable, partnership built on truth. And truth, Elena had discovered, was worth fighting for, worth walking away from billions for, worth rebuilding your entire life from scratch to protect. She'd started as a waitress who thought marrying rich would solve all her problems. She'd learned the hard way that money couldn't buy integrity or kindness or real connection, and she'd ended up with something better than wealth. She'd ended up with herself, whole and strong and unbroken, despite everything that had tried to break her. The woman who'd married Nathan Calloway in that glittering ballroom didn't exist anymore. She'd been dismantled piece by piece from the moment Nathan whispered the wrong name. But from those pieces, Elena had built someone new, someone who knew her worth wasn't determined by who loved her or how much money she had, someone who could stand up to powerful men and win, someone who understood that the strongest thing you can do is tell the truth, even when lying would be easier. That was the woman Julian had fallen in love with. Not the girl Nathan had targeted, but the survivor she'd become. And as Elena sat in that diner, drinking bad coffee and watching her husband play thumb war with his son, while Shauna told increasingly inappropriate stories about her latest dating disasters, she realized something important. She'd gotten her happy ending after all, just not the one she'd been expecting. It wasn't about the luxury penthouse or the billionaire husband or the life of ease she'd once thought she wanted. It was about the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of building a life with people who actually saw her, who valued her for who she was, not what she could do for them. That was worth more than any amount of money. That was worth everything. Years later, when people asked Elena about that period of her life, the brief marriage, the annulment, the court battle, she'd tell them the truth, not to scare them or make them cynical, but because the truth mattered. She'd tell them about the red flags she'd missed, the manipulation she'd fallen for, the way Nathan had weaponized her loneliness and her hope. But she'd also tell them about the moment she'd decided to fight back, about Margaret and Julian and Mia's eventual testimony, about standing in that courtroom and refusing to be gaslight one more time, about winning, not because she had more money or better lawyers, but because the truth was on her side. And she'd tell them about what came after, the slow rebuilding, the therapy, the morning runs that helped clear her head, the gradual process of learning to trust herself again, the unexpected love story with Julian that proved not all Callaways were manipulative sociopaths. Because that was the thing about surviving. You didn't just endure and move on. You took the lessons, the scars, the hard-won wisdom, and you used them to build something better. You helped other people who were going through similar situations. You shared your story so they knew they weren't alone. Elena never regretted fighting Nathan, never regretted standing up in that courtroom and exposing his lies, even when it would have been easier to take the money and disappear. Because some things mattered more than ease or comfort or avoiding conflict. Integrity mattered. Truth mattered. Standing up for yourself when everyone expected you to stay quiet, that mattered. And in the end, those were the things that lasted. Long after the headlines faded and Nathan disappeared from Chicago to rebuild his reputation somewhere else. Long after the drama and the pain and the fear became just memories instead of present reality. Those were the things Elena carried with her. She'd learned that you could survive betrayal, that you could be targeted and manipulated and systematically gaslit and still come out the other side stronger, that the worst thing that ever happened to you could also be the thing that taught you exactly how resilient you actually were. She'd learned that family wasn't always blood. Sometimes it was the friend who let you sleep on her couch for months, or the lawyer who fought for you, or the man who showed you that love could be honest and gentle instead of controlling and cruel. Most importantly, she'd learned that she didn't need saving. She could save herself. And that knowledge, that bone-deep certainty that she could face anything and survive, that was the real happy ending. Everything else was just details.